The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome into this Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here on a Monday. A weird weekend, no Bengals football. I'm used to Mondays coming in and just recapping all Cincinnati Bengals. Monday's show usually writes itself. A little bit of a weird Monday, gentlemen. No Bengals yesterday. Was that a good or a bad thing, by the way? What's the vibe today? Good or a bad thing that there was no Bengals football yesterday?
I think it was good. So what I've learned this year is whether the Bengals win or lose, my week has been ruined. So them not playing has kept me at a happy neutral.
Yeah, I listen, anytime I don't have to watch them at this point, I feel better about myself. So,
that's right.
Good for the Denver Broncos, just pretty much just clinching. I don't know how many more wins it's going to take, but it seems like the Bengals' hopes is all but over. Dolphins have a better chance than the Bengals right now.
They do.
Certainly.
That's true.
So it's a good feeling to get to watch the NFL as a whole. I used to do that back when the Bengals were really bad a few years ago, and now I'm glad to get back into it.
Yeah, again, my team played last Thursday, and then I get to yesterday, and I'm just kind of like, well, there's not even I can't even hate watch your team. I had nothing to do yesterday. It was kind of a boring Sunday. But here we are. Casey, I know you're an hour into your day, probably a little bit more than that, but good morning. How are we?
Good morning. Good morning. I had the exact opposite take of those guys. I think the Bengals still lost over the week. They lost the bye week. It was like 35 or 38-35 or something like that. It was all over Twitter. I don't know if you saw.
I thought it was like 56-40 because Joe had like 7 touchdowns.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it was my weekend was full of Thanksgiving festivities.
Ooh.
So that's what I did all weekend.
Getting a head start?
Yep. I watched a little football. I watched the end of the 1 p.m. slate, which was fantastic.
Electric.
It was electric. The overtime with not Washington, but that was an electric game.
The Bears
too.
versus
the Bears
Vikings.
and the Vikings. That was good. The Washington game was crazy. It was a lot of fun football to watch over the weekend, but no Bengals, so neutral feeling.
Kenner, you were all over my TV on Thursday.
That's true.
Oh, on Thursday night?
Yeah.
I'm just now thawed out. I can just now start moving my hands.
How cool?
That was actually the coolest game.
I was going to say, how cool of an atmosphere was that?
It was the coolest look, I was excited to go. Look, I'm going to a Browns-Steelers game on Thursday Night Football. I was excited about it, right? Like a good buddy of mine said he got us some tickets, so we went. We get there, they're front row, having a blast. It's not freezing, but it's cold. And then all of a sudden it started flurrying. Then it started flurrying a little bit more. The forecast did not predict that we were going to get like blizzard-like conditions by the end of the night, but that's where we were. It was actually the coolest game I'd ever been to. Yes, it helped that my team won. Yes, it helped that, I got to see them beat the Steelers. But honestly, I've never been to a game that had that type of atmosphere and just the aesthetics of it all with the snow. But the snow globe game is what it's being referred to as. So it was a really cool atmosphere, no doubt. Have you guys ever been to a game where it snowed like that?
Not like that.
No.
Not like that. But I've been to snow games, but not nearly that much.
That was insane. Did you find that shirtless clown that was there?
There was quite a few of them all throughout the stadium. We had a few Steelers fans that were sitting around us that started getting a little cocky for a little bit, and then I caught one on video just how sad and they just looked so pitiful by the end of the night watching them lose to the 2-win Browns at that time. So, it was a good night.
Do you think the Browns organization feels sorry that they didn't start the guy that clearly everybody loves and is rallying behind right now? Do you think they regret that?
Probably. I don't know. I'm not going to give you
I'd imagine there would be some regret there because, he's clearly better, and it's not even remotely close. That pregame, the pregame speech he gave was one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
I'm starting to get a little worried about Jameis. I think he knows.
You think he knows?
I think he knows
He's self-aware?
Yeah, I think the horses, the God leading the horses.
The horses prepare for battle?
I think Jameis is starting to know. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But as soon as everyone else recognizes that Jameis is starting to know, I think he's going to lose a little bit of that touch, which is a shame.
It is.
Because he is genuinely this guy. He doesn't even need to lean into it.
Him shouting at the defense, somebody please jump off sides.
That's incredible.
That's just somebody who's hilarious.
Can we all agree, though? Can we all agree that it's only cute and funny when you're winning? I don't find that stuff cute.
No. I actually 100% disagree. I love Jameis no matter what.
Yeah,
Really?
I
Maybe if it was my team, I would feel differently. But yeah, I think Jameis Winston should be guaranteed one of the 32 starting quarterback spots every single year just for an enjoyment factor. Just because then you get the interviews, then you get, the interceptions that are dropped or caught, and then the 5 touchdowns and the helicopter with the mic popping out of your helmet. Only Jameis is doing that stuff. So whenever a quarterback goes down or there's a team that's out of the race, Jameis should always be starting in the NFL because he's just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, he had the crowd nuts afterwards. Like, we all stayed to go down get the Thursday Night Football stage out there and stuff. So we stayed out there. And again, just the charisma and everything he has, like, he captivates everybody. I mean, he's just one of those quarterbacks that he's obviously good enough to be a starting quarterback, but not good enough to take your team to the promised land, or at least that's the perception of him. But the one thing is he's bought himself a starting position, probably in Cleveland, obviously Cleveland for the rest of the year. Lots of talk in Cleveland about what to do. Do you bring him back? I think that they should. I think it would be stupid to make the same mistake you made with Joe Flacco. You actually got bailed out getting a Jameis Winston to come in and kind of replicate a little bit of the run that they went on last year. But as Elliott said, too little too late. They probably regret waiting as long as they did to go there. They probably left a win on the table, not going to him even at halftime against the Bengals a few weeks ago. No, that's not a shot, but like the reality is DTR.
No, you're absolutely right.
I was more pissed about going to DTR at halftime of that Bengals game than I was about waiting as long as they did. And technically, I'm not going to give them credit. It took Deshaun going down for them to make a decision. Hell, if Deshaun's still healthy, is he still out there playing right now? Probably, and that's the sad thing. That's the sad thing. Not for you guys. You guys were enjoying it, but
no, I'm loving it. I'm loving the organizational malpractice. But yeah, Jameis, good for you guys. You guys get to have somebody exciting.
It's fun. It's fun.
But that snow game was the coolest game I'd ever been to. I went to a game a few years ago where it was like in the single digits. I don't like that. Don't like that. I'll take the dome there. But everyone said too. Hey, and I know it was one of them was you, Jacob, about taking the dome and shoving it.
Yep.
But everyone, oh, Kidder, what do you say now? Your team won in the snow. I'm like, yeah, and they had 2 turnovers in the fourth quarter that could have cost them a game. Yes, the Browns are out of the playoff picture, but had the Browns been like trying to, neck and neck with the rest of the 4 and 5 win teams out there, I'd have been pissed if they lose a game because of a couple turnovers and elements that, wouldn't have existed had there been a dome. But I am glad that I was there selfishly to take it all in. I'm neutral. I'm down the middle. If there's a dome, I enjoy being comfortable watching a game. But if not, those elements were fantastic last Thursday as well.
Yeah, I just didn't like that it's so loud that how great that was. How it was like one of the best games to watch. And then in like 2 weeks' time, everyone will be like, oh, I can't wait for my team to put up a dome. It's like you just can't have it both ways. I just want the people that want the domes, which is completely fine and it has its own merit, they are not allowed to enjoy the snow game. They have to act like it sucks. Because it doesn't. And we all know it doesn't. And
Correct.
It's like one of the best things of all time.
Correct.
So if you want a dome, you have to act like that snow game on Thursday night sucked.
Well, I mean, look, it's like, you enjoy yourself when you go to a strip club. All right, but you still look at those women and say you could probably make better choices with your life. That's kind of like the dome. It's like you enjoy yourself when you go there and it's cold, but you should probably make better choices and put a dome, you don't cost your team. Kind of a weird comparison there, but we'll see.
That comparison was out of the clouds. Out of the clouds. What an absurd comparison.
The clouds. The clouds above your head. So you're on your laptop and then the cloud above your head. The clouds. There you go. Little shot at. Never mind.
Well,
we'll leave it at that.
Good for them. Other than that, there was a lot of big NFL games this weekend, and some upsets in the college football world.
That's right.
So I'm very excited to talk about that. We had a guy on the previous show. I won't name his name, but his name is Luke Brenneman, and he said that Ohio State made one of the most disrespectful moves in the history of sports. So I'm.
Did someone play a 60-minute game? 60 minutes.
I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about that. But yeah, it was a good weekend in sports, man. It was a very good weekend.
Yeah, a lot of college football stuff we'll get to. NFL scoreboard. We'll kick off with Elliott's headlines. What we got headlines-wise. Elliott's headlines, ladies and gentlemen.
No. Right now?
No. Pump fake.
You want it now?
Well, I feel like we should do it for the next segment, no? I mean, we can do it now.
No,
We can do it
we're gonna
whenever.
pause. We're going to pause 10 seconds for station identification. We'll be right back. More off the bench. When we come back, Elliot's headlines next. I hadn't hosted a show in quite a few days. A little rusty, But 10-minute opening segment. Now you have way more time for all of Elliot's headlines.
Yeah, thank you.
right.
All right. Elliot's headlines right here off the bench. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, 1410 ESPN Radio. We send it to our guy, Elliot. Elliot's headlines.
Elliot loves three things: Joey Votto, David Bell, and leading off the bench with top headlines.
It's true. I do. Headlines: NFL, the Eagles last night, they blow the doors off the Rams 37-20. Saquon Barkley, 26 carries, 255 yards, 2 touchdowns. Both his touchdowns were 70 plus?
Yeah.
Tough. A.J. Brown, 109 yards and a touchdown as well. The Eagles did, however, lose Brandon Graham for the remainder of this season. So that's a bad blow there.
Saquon became the first player in NFL, or since Walter Payton in November of 1977 to have 500 scrimmage yards in a 2-game span.
Really?
Yeah.
How about that?
Unbelievable. I mean, it's unbelievable what he's doing.
Nick Sirianni, good coach. The Chiefs.
Real quick on that, because
Sure.
right last year, Christian McCaffrey, everyone kept trying to push him into the MVP conversation. Jacob, I know we've talked about this in the past, like how tough it is for a running back to win an MVP award, but all over the national shows, all everyone's talking about is if there was ever a season now, even after Christian McCaffrey's great year last year, Derrick Henry was actually getting the love early in the season about could he potentially win MVP this year. Saquon, everyone seems to be going all in on Saquon being the favorite to win MVP at this point. Now, Vegas may disagree, but thoughts on Saquon's MVP possibilities, especially at the level and rate at which he's playing now?
I think Saquon, much like CMC a year ago, has a very real chance at winning the MVP. I do think the thing that's going to help Saquon, and why I didn't think Derrick Henry really ever had a shot, is because he has the receiving upside as well. Derrick Henry's numbers, if you look at him, are going to be more or less whatever his rushing numbers are. Saquon Barkley has a lot of receiving upside as well that he adds to his game, which I think is going to bring that. If he gets to 2,000 rushing yards and he's able to tack on a good number of receiving yards as well, I think he can certainly enter that conversation. I think the other thing that's going to help Saquon in the MVP conversation this year that wasn't necessarily the case last year with CMC is that the best statistical quarterback in the league isn't going to be able to win the award. And I think it's going to be very, very tough for that committee or the writers or whoever it is that's voting on that award to give that MVP award to someone who is clearly the second or third best quarterback in football. And I know that that's probably what they're going to do with a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson. And I'm not even saying that one of those two players doesn't deserve the MVP. I'm just saying if you're going to give it to the best player at their position, you're probably going to have to give it to Saquon Barkley, because I have a hard time believing Joe Burrow is not going to finish at the top of a lot of those stats, and he's not going to win the award with the way the Bengals season has gone.
Yeah, I would want to see it. I just don't think. I firmly believe, and Saquon Barkley is incredible. I think for that Eagles team, though, you could point at like 3 different guys and be like, all these 3 guys are also just as important as Saquon to the functioning, the well-run functioning aspect of this roster. That's at least what I see. I think he's had a phenomenal year, and if you're going to give him MVP, I'd rather him win it than any of the other quarterbacks, because I think he's had a better year than pretty much most of the quarterbacks outside of Josh Allen. So I'd want it. I just don't think there's a world where it happens. Not this year. Continuing on.
Back to Elliot's headlines. Yes,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Thank you. The Chiefs, they hang on to beat the Panthers 30-27, another walk-off for Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes, 269 yards, 3 touchdowns. Back-to-back games with 2 touchdowns for Noah Gray. Noah Gray, I guess, is just the new Travis Kelce. 4 catches, 66 yards, 2 touchdowns. Bryce Young looks serviceable. Bryce Young, 21 for 35, 263 yards and a touchdown. How about that? That's a little good game. Adam Thielen back, 3 for 57. David Moore, 6 for 81 and a touchdown. The Chiefs, again, I bet there's not a lot of people that go out and say Patrick Mahomes didn't do enough. He he choked away the game. But we're not going to say that because he had 269 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, similarly to how Joe Burrow plays every game. But Joe Burrow gets the blame. Patrick Mahomes does not. Moving on. The Packers, they destroyed the Brock Purdy-less 49ers 38-10. Josh Jacobs, he had 3 touchdowns in that win. It turns out you might actually need to pay Brock Purdy. So the 49ers are going to have to pay Brock Purdy, and I believe this is the beginning of the end, or maybe it's just the end of the 49ers dynasty here.
Oh, they're in a bad spot.
I don't see a way out of it. They can still make the playoffs, but I don't know. This 49ers team is not what it was. Christian McCaffrey is not who he was. Deebo Samuel's not who he was. They just aren't that good. I think they had their run in the sun, and it's over now. Good for the Packers, though. The Packers are legit. The Seahawks, they beat the Cardinals 16-6, probably one of the worst games of the weekend. They now lead the NFC West. So you're talking about a crazy NFC West. The 49ers are in last place. The Seahawks are somehow in first. I think that was an exact switch from 2 or 3 weeks ago. The Raiders, they lose to the Broncos 29-19. They also lose Gardner Minshew for the remainder of their season. For those Raiders fans that are probably looking for a good draft pick, that's not a bad thing. The Lions, they obliterate the Colts 24-6. Thank you for showing up, Colts. The Dolphins, they pounded the Patriots 34-15. The Dolphins look to be all the way back, at least right now. Tua looks healthy. We have Waddle, a revenge game this year, one of his first good games I've seen maybe this season for him.
Since week 1, really.
Since week 1. The Giants, they get their teeth kicked in by the Bucs 30-7. The Giants are a joke. The Giants are a disgrace. They were talking about it post-game. It was Malik Neighbors came out and said, it's not a quarterback problem. It's just the Giants' problem. It's a bad place to be if you're a New York Giants fan. I don't know what you do with Dabble. I don't know what you do with the quarterback room. I don't know what you do with anything because it's a bad, bad situation. I guess you just tank for a draft pick and see what you can get, but yikes. Let's see. Moving on. We have the Texans losing to the Titans 32-27. C.J. Stroud pulled a Dan Orlovsky, ran out of the back of the end zone to lose that one. The Cowboys somehow survived against the Commanders in the craziest game of the weekend. 2 special teams touchdowns for the Cowboys. The Commanders scored with 20 seconds left on an 85-yard touchdown to Terry McLaurin. All they had to do was tackle him in bounds. They did not do it. Terry gets the end zone, but Austin Seibert missed his second extra point of the game. Both those extra points were the first extra point misses of the season for him, and they lose the game to the Cowboys. Brutal loss. Casey mentioned it. The Bears did recover an onside kick to force overtime. They did then lose to the Minnesota Vikings. So sad news there. Those are your NFL scores of the weekend. College football. There were some good college football games, Justin Kinner. 7th-ranked Alabama, yikes, didn't score a touchdown in their 24-3 loss to Oklahoma. The touchdown that they did have that didn't count was pretty sick, though.
And it didn't affect the game. Alabama was going to lose that game no matter which way that call went. That is one of the worst calls I have ever seen in the history of football. I don't understand how you throw the flag when you did. That's a penalty that you call pre-snap. I don't understand how you thought he was covered up. And what we're talking about here, Ryan Williams had a touchdown against Oklahoma. It would have cut the lead to 14. I don't think Alabama was going to win the game. It was an amazing catch down the sideline to get 1 foot in bounds. They threw a flag about halfway through the play that Ryan Williams was covered up. And therefore, if he touches the ball first, it would be illegal touching. That penalty is supposed to be called at the line of scrimmage if he is covered up, right when the ball is snapped as soon as he runs the route. So when it was thrown and what it was called made no sense. So really perplexing call there, but all around just a very, very frustrating game for Alabama. And it has them on the outside looking into the playoffs. Still has a shot. Still a small crack in the door, but I wouldn't hold my breath.
Yeah, I mean, everybody else lost. So if there's any solace to take, there will be a 3, maybe there might be a 4-loss SEC team. The way this committee's thinking. Auburn, they took down A&M in quadruple overtime. For somebody who live bet Auburn, for somebody who live bet Texas A&M, that stunk. But Auburn. 22nd ranked Iowa State survived against Utah 30 to, or excuse me, what was the score of that? I actually don't know. I mistyped the score.
31-28.
Thank you. I put 21-28. I'm like, what the hell did I do? 6th ranked Notre Dame destroyed Army 49-14. 12th ranked Boise State. They beat Wyoming 17-13. Ashton Jeanty became the first running back to post 2,000 rushing yards since 2019.
And his Heisman odds plummeted.
Really?
Oh, went completely in the tank.
How about that?
Yeah, it makes no sense.
BYU fell to Arizona State. Crazy circumstances. I don't know if you guys watched this one, but basically Arizona State decided to implement the let's just run backwards 3 different times and see if we can milk out all the clock. Well, they did that, and they tried to do it. The final play of the game allegedly was just a deep throwaway, and it milked out the clock. Arizona State storms the field. Well, then the refs get together and say, no, we're going to put 1 second back. We're going to put 1 second back. BYU gets the football at midfield, throws a Hail Mary. It's completed, but at the 2-yard line. 2 yards short. BYU, that would have been an absolutely insane way to win that game, but fall just short. 9th-ranked Ole Miss, they fell to Florida on the road, 24-17. And finally, Indiana, they got embarrassed by Ohio State, 38-15. It was never a game.
No, Indiana was held to 83 net rushing yards and 68 net passing yards. It's the first time this century an AP top 5 team was held to such few yards in a regular season game.
Yikes.
It was a generational butt whooping. There is no way that you can look at that game and say that Indiana's the top 12 team in the country, and then everything that needed to happen the rest of the weekend happened.
Yeah.
The biggest winner of this weekend, bar none, is Indiana, and they did everything in their power to miss the playoff. I mean, they were embarrassed in Columbus. That game was not nearly as close as that score shows, and that score is with a touchdown right at the end. That made it closer to what it was, but that's still not a clear depiction of what it was. Indiana took a 7+ minute touchdown drive at the end of the game to try to salvage their margin of loss, to try to sneak into the playoff, and didn't exactly work out that way.
Ohio State didn't get a 4th and 1 early in the first quarter down in the red zone.
Yep.
It was like, if they would have gotten that, it would have just been over there. But it was somewhat close at halftime, 14-7, and then Ohio State just destroyed them.
So, look, I tried to give Indiana a little respect heading in to this matchup because we watched Indiana take on a lot of similar opponents as Ohio State, and more times than not, Indiana looked more impressive against some of those opponents. Indiana's strength fit some of the weaknesses that Ohio State has displayed throughout the year. I think their secondary at times is questionable outside of Caleb Downs. They're cornerbacks, let's just say that.
Yeah.
Burke is a guy that a lot of quarterbacks target. Quarterbacks that aren't even that good. I think Rourke's an solid quarterback. He's looked great all season. I try to give Indiana the benefit of the doubt, saying that coming into this matchup, I think Indiana, I'm not picking them to win or saying they have a chance to win. I think they have a chance to make it close. I wanted to give them that respect because I'm like, I know they've played nobody, but to their credit, they've made a bunch of nobodies look like nobodies. So I want to give them a little respect heading into this matchup. And then all the things I was concerned about heading into this matchup were on full display in that opening drive. Indiana made it look easy. Indiana marched down the field in just a handful of plays and punched the ball in the end zone, and then there was concern, and then there was worry. Ohio State had a 3-and-out on top. So Ohio State gets the 3-and-out. Indiana marches down the field. They score. Ohio State comes down the field. They can't convert on the 4th down. All of a sudden, things look a little rocky in Columbus. I'm like, holy crap, Indiana, they're not going to win, but they're doing this. Like they're actually showing that they can hang here. And then it was brutal the rest of the way. Once the defense, whatever adjustment Jim Knowles made, they just feasted on that offensive line of Indiana. Indiana did not face a defense like this all season. For everyone out there that was pulling for the little guys, saying, hey, Indiana, this is why the 12-team playoff exists. This is why, because teams like that, if Alabama lost like that, we would just chalk it up to it's Alabama. They're still great. Indiana, we want to bury them. But the bottom line is everything that people were speaking out against Indiana on was on full display on Saturday.
Absolutely.
Did they get their doors beat off from a score perspective? No. But from it's simple. Football's pretty simple, Jacob, right? Bigger, faster, stronger. Ohio State was bigger. They were faster. They were stronger. They were better. Indiana got a lot of help this past weekend, as Jacob alluded to. A lot of teams that needed to lose lost, and a lot of doors that were almost shut on Indiana that were maybe cracked for a bit are now wide back open. Indiana, take care of Purdue, you're in, but I'm not high on Indiana anymore. I'm not sold on Indiana. They are a result of a very super soft schedule, and if I'm every team out there, Jacob and Elliot, I don't schedule one tough team in my non-conference ever. It is the stupidest thing in the world to ever challenge yourself. Ohio State, that's great. You're playing Texas. You're playing Alabama. Cancel them. Get rid of them. Because Indiana has proven you don't need to play anybody to get respect in the college football playoff, and they proved it on Saturday.
Indiana proved something else that nobody talks about with their schedule. They proved that it's beneficial to buy out of games. They were supposed to play Louisville in their non-conference this year. Louisville, who's a decent ACC team, they paid Louisville $1 million to not play that game, to make their schedule easier so they can get in the playoff. And they're going to be rewarded for it. The committee should set a precedent and say you need to play a reasonable schedule to get in. And I don't put all of this on Indiana. I put a lot of it on the Big Ten. You play 9 conference games, you can't get them a better than 58th schedule? Let's figure this out here. The schedule discrepancies in the Big Ten and the SEC are insane. UMass has played more ranked SEC opponents than Texas. UMass.
Yeah.
That's crazy. These schools need to find a way to even the playing field of the schedules. And until they do, the schools with the worst schedules need to be punished. And it's not just Indiana. I think there's another shining example of this, and it's Texas. Texas needs to be looked at differently than the rest of the SEC. If Texas loses to Texas A&M this weekend, they should be on the outside looking in of the playoffs. They have not beaten anyone. Georgia came into their stadium and embarrassed them by basically the same margin that Ohio State just beat Indiana by. Indiana and Texas should be looked at very, very similarly. And I don't understand why there's a massive discrepancy between the two.
Yeah, that Georgia game, Texas benched their quarterbacks twice. They benched their starter, went to their backup, and then benched him to go back to the original starter. That's how bad Texas looked against the only good team that they played this year. And they have a chance to beat a good team this coming up weekend, Jacob, as you alluded to. And maybe that brand bias does come in for Texas. That's why they're more forgivable than Indiana. I do believe brand bias exists. I'm not big on the SEC. I hate the SEC bias people, the Danny Cannells of the world. Those people make me want to vomit. I don't think that there's a bias. SEC bias equals common sense more times than not. All right, the conference that won 4 straight national championships with 3 different teams over a 4-year span, the conference that puts more players in the NFL than anybody else. I have a hard time comprehending how people just say it's an SEC bias versus just eliminating all common sense when it comes to football. Texas, though, I do believe in brand bias. Jake, I think it's the brand bias that kind of allows them to get out of jail free more so than Indiana at this point.
Yeah, talk about brand bias getting you out of jail free. You guys remember when Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois at home? Because I think everyone forgot. That's the worst loss in the country by a country mile.
Yeah. They're
barely bowl eligible. They're 7th in the MAC. They went into the Golden Dome and whooped them. I think it was 16-14, but they won. That's insane that no one cares. I was listening to Tom and Luke's show this morning, and I don't blame them because it's true. They listed Notre Dame as one of the teams that are locked into the playoffs. And they are.
Yeah.
Why? They lost to Northern Illinois.
They were ranked.
I know that they've looked great since, and Notre Dame has. They certainly look like a top 12 team since, but I don't get how they're not being punished for that loss at all. They're going to get a home game. They're going to be ranked as high as Notre Dame could possibly be ranked because they couldn't get the bye. They're going to be either the 5 or 6 seed and get a home game and an easier path through the playoffs. Be rewarded for that loss. Notre Dame wins that game. Notre Dame loses that game. What's the difference in their final season ranking?
Yeah, it's.
I don't even think it's one spot.
No.
That's crazy to me.
It is. By the way, for anybody on Indiana that was saying that Ohio State shouldn't run up the score, I thought that was very funny. When you were up 70-3 on Western Illinois, 70-3 in the fourth quarter, they wanted to punch one in to get up to 77-3 in the fourth quarter of that game. So it's like if you're gonna call out Ohio State for that, why don't you take a look in the mirror for some of these scores? They scored with 3 minutes against Nebraska to go up, I think, 56-3. So it's like that's nonsense.
Yep, I agree. Let's talk about that more. Let's step away for a few moments. We'll pick up with this. We got a lot more to get into. The Bengals favored over the Steelers heading into this weekend. We'll talk about that coming up here shortly. Jonathan India traded over the weekend. That was not a surprise, but I'm curious everyone's thoughts on the return.
Because I broke the news to Elliot.
He did.
Really?
Elliot didn't know until my text. He was at dinner.
And like I said, it wasn't a surprise, but I'm curious people's thoughts on the return. We'll talk about all of that and more coming up. College football, Jonathan India trade, Burrow, Bengals favored over the Steelers heading into the weekend. Plenty more to dive into. We'll be right back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Elliot, before the break, you brought up the fact that Indiana fans were a little upset with Ryan Day and Ohio State for running up the score, and I could not have agreed with you more when you brought up some of the Indiana scores throughout the season. When you brought up the fact that Indiana has, and by the way, I'm not soft, so I'm not even going to call it running up the score on teams. I don't view what Indiana did at all throughout the season as running up the score on teams. Indiana, who will never get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to brand bias, they have to do things to the umpteenth level to get people's attention.
100%.
If you're going to play nobodies, make them look like nobodies. They won 77-3 against Western Illinois. They put 50 up against Charlotte, 52-14, 42-28 over Maryland. You brought up that Nebraska game, 56-7. That game was done in the third quarter, and they kept their starters in. They didn't even technically have their starting quarterback. Rourke was out that game. He got hurt. They kept their starters, and they kept punching it in the end zone. And I said the entire time, I have no issue with that. In today's college football, whether we like it or not, people always say all that should matter is the results, not the style points. Well, style points matter because if you're going to beat bad teams, you got to make sure those teams look bad. And Indiana did that to every one of their opponents this season, and kudos to them for that. I remember back the inaugural 14 college football playoff season, Urban Meyer brought up the fact that, hey, when they, again, at the beginning of the season, Braxton Miller goes down. Then they go to J.T. Barrett, who played perfect the rest of the way, gets injured against Michigan in the final regular season game. They got to go to Cardell Jones in the Big Ten championship game where they played Wisconsin. And Urban Meyer said, we knew we had this game done probably midway point through the second quarter heading into halftime. But he said they had to keep their starters in. They had to continue to pile on the points. If you would have beat Wisconsin 28-0 in the Big Ten title game back in 2014, Ohio State does not make the college football playoff that season. They had to put 50 up. They had to definitively dominate their opponent to show the committee that, yes, we just lost J.T. Barrett, but we might just be better with our third-string quarterback, Cardell Jones, as wild as that sounds. It's to the point to where I've heard a lot of coaches come out and say, the playoff has almost made it dangerous for teams, and they've had to mentally balance. Do we take our starters at now and risk injuries to guys that are playing meaningless snaps late in games and we're up by 3 or 4 possessions? No, we got to continue piling it on, because if we leave it up to the human element of the committee where they say, yeah, you beat a bad team, but you only won by 17, you only won by 14, that's not enough. Ohio State, they're in the playoff. They're fine. But to bludgeon their second top 5 team of the season and to improve to 2-1 against top 5 teams on the season, that was a must for Ohio State. In fact, Trevion Henderson, I love you to death, but don't you ever slide, short of the end zone again. You have to pile on the points. You have to dominate opponents. I am so happy. Ryan Day drives me nuts a lot. I had no issue with him continuing to run up the score. Doyle, or whatever the reporter's name is, let me go pull this up, because I remember he was just all pissed off over the weekend about Ohio State. Greg Doyle with the Indy Star. Okay, he's the one that did the weird little hand gesture to Caitlin Clark and got banned from covering Indiana Fever. Yeah, that guy. He was so upset. Ohio State, Ryan Day ran it up on Kirk Cignetti. He goes on to say it was classless of the Ohio State organization, or the organization of the program, to do that. What are you talking about? That was not even a blowout score, right? Like, that was a pull-away game late. Good for Ohio State for having that mental toughness at the end to say, hey, we're not just going to win. We're going to run it up on you. And that wasn't even a run-up score. Ohio State in the 30s, I thought they could have put more up on Indiana, to be honest. I'm disappointed that they didn't. Yeah. That was a long-winded way to say that was not running up the score. That's exactly what you have to do. Just like I had no problem with Kirk Cignetti, by the way. He was also playing the game. He was playing the game from the opposite way. We can't get blown out. That was his mindset. We can lose this game. We can't get blown out, which is why he kept his starters in late in that game, which is why they continued to fight to score, to try to keep that score close. We all knew that they got their asses kicked. It wasn't even close. The scoreboard was actually tighter than what that game was because they got dominated. But Cignetti said, hey, from a human element standpoint with that committee, they're going to look at that score and say, well, they got beat by double digits, but it wasn't a complete ass whooping. It was the score was respectable. Indiana's fine. In Ohio State, they weren't disrespectful at all. You could tell who has covered and followed big-time football for a long time, and you could tell who hasn't. Indiana media, soft. That was not a run-up, not even a little bit.
For the last 9 minutes of the football game, both Indiana and Ohio State were playing for the exact same thing, margin of victory. You can't look me in the eyes and tell me when you're down 15-31, a 15-play, 7.5-minute drive, running it down Ohio State's throat when they're in prevent is the best way to come back from down 16 points. It's not. That's killing the clock to try to lose by less, which I applaud Cignetti for. He understands the system. He understands what it takes. You have to lose by less. If Indiana loses by 20, they're risking missing the playoff. If you lose 31-15, you probably have a decent shot at getting in, more likely than not. Ohio State then gets the ball back, Travion Henderson goes down, and Will Howard sneaks it in. And everyone's saying, oh, he snuck it out of the kneel-down formation. How about the time when he snuck it the play before? You were that surprised that they did it a second time? You thought they were just going to, never mind, just kidding. They were both playing for the same thing. They were both playing for margin of victory. Margin of victory matters in college football. And the question at the end of the day, the question that I have for Indiana fans is, who do you want to be treated like? All week you said we're a top 5 team. We're coming in. Ohio State, be ready. We're ready to play with the big dogs. Okay. You want to be treated like Penn State and Michigan? Ohio State's not kneeling that down against Penn State and Michigan. Ohio State's kneeling that down against Akron in week 2. You want to be treated like a group of 5 team? You want to be treated like the bottom of the barrel? Fine. We will. But don't keep talking in the offseason. Don't have your coach go to press conferences and say Ohio State sucks. Don't say Google me. All I do is win. When you start talking like that, you get treated like a top 5 team. And when you get treated like a top 5 team, you don't take knees when you're up 2 scores at the end of the game. You get a big margin of victory in a top 5 win because that's what good teams do. Ohio State all week, Ryan Day in every clip said one thing. He said, leave no doubt. He said, you're in a cage match for 60 minutes. Leave no doubt. What did Ohio State do? Ohio State played a 60-minute football game and kicked their teeth in. There's nothing I wanted more than them to score on that last drive. I'm glad they did.
That fired me up.
It did? How'd you feel about it? Did you feel they ran up the score, Elliot?
No, I think that's nonsense. You play to the end of the game. They kicked an onside kick. What do you want them to do?
They kicked an onside kick.
Like it's like they were still trying. If they would have kicked that off, then yeah, Ohio State would have knelt the ball out. It's not what happened though. They went for 2, kicked an onside kick to show that they were still trying. So Ohio State had to say we're still trying too, and we'll keep trying as long as you keep trying.
I've seen this in mid-major basketball at times when a mid-major goes up against a high major, and the high major has like a 25, 30-point lead. It'll be about 6 minutes. The high major team will then they'll empty their bench and they'll go, and a mid-major may have already emptied their bench. So, both coaches are basically saying, hey, this game's done. Let's get our starters out. And then the mid-major sees that, oh, man, the high major went to their bench. We can make this score respectable. Let's go back to our starters. And I've seen this multiple times. And the high major team says, well, if you're going to put your starters back out there, you're not going to make it look like, oh, man, we barely hung on to win by 12 or 13 against a mid-major. We got to make you look like you're a mid-major. And then they put their starters out. And then the high major team, they're the bully, right? The mid-major should be able to play their starters against your backups to make it look like the high major struggled to beat a mid-major, and you're supposed to take it on the chin. No, and that's a great point, Jacob. You got to ask yourself, who do you want to be, Indiana? Because if you want to be treated like the bottom of the Big Ten teams where, all right, we'll pull our punches. Right? There's some teams that Ohio State could have continued to put up points and probably put 60 or 70 up, but they don't do that because that team is not a threat. Indiana, they treated you like a threat. You didn't like it. You can't have it both ways. You cannot have it both ways when it's all said and done. And I thought that was a good point, something I haven't even thought about. But nonetheless, Indiana's going to make the playoff unless they screw up against Purdue. And you better hope they don't screw up against Purdue.
It is infuriating to me that Indiana can play that game and still have everything break their way. It kills me. I had a whole segment planned today about how they shouldn't make the playoffs. I sent Casey 3 clips just preemptively on Saturday night that we don't even need to use now because they're locked into the playoff.
Damn.
It's such a shame. It's such a shame because everyone in the country that watched that football game saw a really, really good football team playing against and that's what Indiana is. And we're going to figure that out pretty early in the tournament.
Yeah, look, I didn't know that they canceled a game with Louisville. That actually would have been a hell of a non-con game. That would have been a hell of a game.
Would have been great.
It's not the toughest non-con opponent, but I think those teams are fairly matched. I think that would have been a hell of a game. nonetheless. But let me ask you guys this last thing, closing point on Indiana. Curt Cignetti, I appreciate him and also kind of give him the side eye a little bit too. I don't know what to make of him. Jake, you made the joke all the time that a few weeks ago, especially after Ohio State lost to Oregon and vibes were really low when it came to the Buckeyes, that if Curt Cignetti and Indiana, they come to Columbus and win, Cignetti doesn't even get on the plane to head back to Bloomington. That basically, he's the Buckeyes' next head coach. I don't know what to make of him. If I'm an Indiana fan, I love him to death, and you should take a bullet for the guy. I think the guy has made Indiana more relevant. I love it from that perspective. But Deion Sanders made Colorado relevant, but what people don't like about Deion is how cocky and arrogant that he is. Now, some people love that about him. Some people do not. Same thing with Cignetti. Some people love that about him. Some people do not. When I hear the Google me thing, I don't hear, like, you would never hear, if there's ever Nick Saban would deflect everything away from him. You put him in the Hall of Fame, and he's trying to make it about everyone else except him. Urban Meyer, the great coaches have always done that. I think, and I say this about Deion, I say this about all coaches, when they do the Google me thing, guys, that rubs me the wrong way. I'm out. Like, if Ryan Day ever said that, I'd roll my eyes and say, Ryan Day, shut up. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is Ohio State. No one needs to Google you. Like, you just need to let your results talk for themselves. It just seemed when you have a head coach that's continuously playing into that brand, that it's more about you than the team. Cignetti's done a hell of a job. I'm not going to take that away from him, but am I making something out of nothing? When you see coaches do that, what does that do to you? What's your thoughts on Cignetti when he does the Google me routine?
Ryan Day has taken the spotlight after a game and put it on himself. I can only think of one time, and it was after they beat Notre Dame, and he did the Lou Holtz speech.
Yeah.
That's really the only time I can think of that Ryan Day has taken the spotlight and put it on himself. Even after big wins, which he has had plenty of in his career, he's talked about how much it means for the other players. And even just after this game, the first thing he talked about is how much this Michigan game means for the seniors that chose to come back. And that's obviously what everyone's really thinking about this year is the seniors that chose to come back for the Michigan game. And for Ryan Day to talk about them and not himself when everyone knows that this game is his job, it tells me everything I need to know about Ryan Day. He's focused on the players, and that's what I want out of a head coach. Curt Cignetti, obviously not. Before the game, they asked him about how it was a big game, what this means for Indiana, and he immediately started answering what it meant for him and how it was a big game for him. And then Google me, all I do is win and all that good stuff. That's great. That's great. But I feel like it would have been a great opportunity this week on a massive, massive stage for Curt Cignetti to put a lot of the shine on his players and on the kids on his team, and he chose not to. And I think this isn't the first time we've seen that. When he was on game day last year at JMU and they played App State, he took that time to talk about himself and his record and how he's gotten that program to where he is now, which is deserved, and he has. And he's a great coach. He's a great program builder. And if I'm an Indiana fan, I'm extremely happy that I got him in Bloomington and have him locked up for the long term. But I don't know if he's a guy that I would be super excited to have leading my team whenever you build to that top. I think he's a great builder, but not exactly the personality I would want leading the charge for me.
Guys, I think my camera just got shot. Can you guys still
sure
hear
did.
me?
We can still hear you.
Yeah,
There's no camera.
What do you?
Kenner, blink if you're in trouble. Kenner, blink if you're in trouble.
Oh my God!
How did this happen?
It's plugged in. I don't know. Just once. I'd like to have a day where my technology doesn't.
Well, good thing we're a radio show.
Kinda.
Yeah.
Kinda's right.
Dip out and come back in, Kenner.
All right.
So I guess what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to break. So ESPN 1410 Wing AM Chatterbox Sports Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. We're gonna be right back and see if we can fix Justin's camera
for the radio show.
For the radio.
Man, there's so many people in this chat that are like, damn, I'm so mad that Kenneth figured out his camera. But I'm back. Sorry, guys. But we welcome you back off the bench. Presented by United Dairy Farmers, Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Ruring, and Jacob Titsett. I talked about Kurt Spagnetti. Jacob, I got your take. Elliot will close out the Indiana conversation quickly. Just when you see a coach that acts like that, your takeaway is what? Do you mind the Google me stuff? Is it a problem, or is it? I joked about Jameis Winston earlier in the show. I said, "Hey, that stuff's cool if you're winning, but when you don't win, it's not cute anymore." I think that kind of goes for Kurt Spagnetti as well.
Yeah, if you bring a national championship to a school, if you're the head coach of a team that wins a national title, then you can say it. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you then. But if you haven't, then please don't. Because it's silly. It's a nonsense thing to do. You're the head coach of Indiana, who legit their best win coming into this game was what? Nebraska? Who was their best win?
Yeah, I guess it would be 6-6 Nebraska. Brand wise, we'll give them Michigan.
Okay, then brand wise, we'll give you Michigan. They did just flip a quarterback, so does that count?
I don't like the word flip.
They flipped him.
I prefer the word.
They flipped him.
I prefer the word bought.
Yeah, this guy stinks. I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful, and I don't care for.
I did not expect you to have that take.
I don't care for Ohio State. So this is just. I think that if you're gonna talk smack and then you get absolutely humbled, it's just I'm not gonna be on your side. So
do you know what he
tried?
Do you know what he wanted you to Google? By the way,
what?
His Sun Belt East Division Coach of the Year trophy.
Yeah, it's tough.
He wins.
Like he wins that.
That would be a tough Google search. That'd be like 3 pages of Google results to get to that trophy. But congratulations to him. If that's what he wants a cookie for, he can have a cookie. I'll give him one.
To his defense, if he's not that outspoken and in the media, James Madison, he probably doesn't get the Indiana job.
That's fair.
That's why he was talked about so much as a Group of 5 jump to a Power 4 job. So it's all worth it. I mean, you don't know how much of it's fake and how much of it's necessary for the players to buy in. Maybe the players, because it's always JMU guys that went to Indiana. It's basically the whole roster just transferred up there. So yeah, I don't really know whether or not that's just something that he does for them and something that they've all bought into. I'm really interested to see how he translates to recruiting at the Power 4 level because he didn't have to this year. He went from James Madison to Indiana to be the head coach. He took all the good players from James Madison that he had already recruited. He's never recruited at this high of a level before. I'm very interested to see how that'll go, but a lot of talk about that game. Obviously, a big win, a top 5 win. Ryan Day 2-1 in top 5 games this year. Really, really good for that record that we always talk about when they play those games. However, only one thing matters this whole season, and it's this week. And we're finally here. It's 8 week. It's game week. Nothing else matters. Top 5 wins don't matter. The other 10 wins don't matter. You got to beat Michigan this week. 20.5-point favorites.
Are they really?
20.5-point favorites. There is no excuse but to win this game, and I really hope they run up the score. 75 zippo. It would make me so happy.
20.5. I don't know if I can take 20.5. 20.5 might be too many points.
I think it is. I think that game will be closer than this game was.
I would agree.
How about Michigan finally looking like a team that knows how to play offense over the weekend?
Yeah, no, naturally. Naturally, they would start
ran it
clicking
up.
right before our game. 50 points for an offense that hasn't moved the ball all year long, right before they play Ohio State. Of course.
Exactly.
Of course.
Real quick, I want to go back to Shedeur Sanders real quick. Or really, we never talked about Shedeur, but I want to bring up Shedeur. You brought up the Giants earlier, Elliot, when we were talking about just how bad they've been throughout the Elliot's headlines portion. But the Giants have been bad, and we know that Shedeur Sanders, top quarterback in this draft coming up. And Jake, I know you can't wait to get into draft talk when it's all said and done. But it is interesting that the talks about Shedeur Sanders, that Deion Sanders will have a say on where he goes and will play a role in that and making sure that he's going to go somewhere where he can succeed. And you have neighbors coming out saying that, hey, it's not a quarterback issue with the Giants, it's an organization issue, and just a lot of messy stuff happening with that Giants organization who has not been relevant since Eli Manning was winning them Super Bowls. Like, they just cannot get it figured out. After every loss for the Giants, Shedeur Sanders comes out on social media and does I think it's praise God or thank God or something like the battery got exhausted on the camera again. So just giving you guys a heads up, and I'll finish my thoughts and switch over to a different computer. But bear with me. I'm sorry.
Justin.
I know. But no, like, is it weird that I can't get the camera on? No, is it weird that Shedeur Sanders after every Giants loss, like of all the situations he could find himself in the NFL, why would the Giants be a good situation? That would worry me about Shedeur, that he cares more about just the spotlight and living in New York City and being in the big city than he does about actually going somewhere where he feels like he can win. I would have a problem with that. Am I wrong in that? When you have your dad coming out and everything saying, hey, I'm going to have it play a role in where he ends up, but you're going to probably send him to one of the worst quarterback situations you could send anyone to. Is it weird that the Giants seems to be the spot that he's the most excited to potentially end up with?
Yeah, that would be weird. I personally think that they're looking at the Raiders. I think Shedeur is circling Oakland. Or I guess I did it again. Yeah. Shedeur circling Las Vegas, and that's where Dion would ideally have him go. That's just my opinion. But yeah, the Giants certainly seem like the most likely destination. I think they are just an abysmal football team who, more likely than not, is probably going to be picking number one. I would expect the Jaguars to back into at least one more win. I don't know that it's the same for the Giants. I think the Giants will certainly be up there, and number one could still be Travis Hunter. So I think the Giants will probably be the first one to take a quarterback no matter what. One thing I do think is interesting in the NFL draft conversation, I guess I can just ask you right now, Elliot.
Sure.
Do you think that there should be a bigger question about taking Travis Hunter at 1? I know he's incredible, and he's a great corner, he's a great wide receiver. We're both on the same page that at least full-time, he's not going to play two ways in the NFL. And it's not even going to be a conversation. If he does, it'll be packages on offense at the most, right?
Yeah.
So you're then taking the second best corner or the fourth best wide receiver in the draft at number 1, which you wouldn't take the best at those positions at number 1.
I think it depends on your situation. I think if you're the Jaguars, you could maybe talk yourselves into that pick. I think if you're the Raiders, you can't.
But then why wouldn't you take McMillan from Arizona if you want a wide receiver? Or Will Johnson from Michigan if you want a corner?
I think earlier on this year you said, it was regarding the Bengals, but nonetheless, don't try to be cute, just take the best player.
I do agree.
And so from that standpoint, I get it. Like if he's the Heisman winner, if he's as good as you make him out to be, even if he doesn't play full-time both sides, he will play both sides at least minimally every once in a while. And I think even to have him there as that, I think he's worth a draft pick. There's a couple franchises I wouldn't do it because he wouldn't help that team at all. And for his 4-year rookie deal, it would make no sense to have him other than him just be trade bait. So if I were the Carolina Panthers, I wouldn't. If I were the Las Vegas Raiders, I wouldn't. Maybe the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars, because you have a quarterback, you can talk and a running back. You have a situation there where you could potentially get him to live up to his potential. But yeah, I'd draft him if I was the Jaguars and pretty much nowhere else. You have to have a quarterback or at least some semblance of a roster to draft Travis Hunter, in my opinion.
I guess the follow-up question to that is, do you think any of these quarterbacks are worthy of a number 1 overall pick?
No, I do not.
So if you're picking number 1 and you're the Giants, are you trading out and having someone make that decision for you, picking in the 4, 5, 6 range and having one of those quarterbacks off the board and getting some mid-round value? That's what I would do. I think this is a ripe draft to trade back. And the other thing that I think is important to look at for Bengals fans, welcome back, Kenner. It's good to see you. I think it's important to look at for Bengals fans this year as we're sitting at the 10, 11, 12 range. We need to be rooting on quarterbacks to fall. And I know that that's not anything on any Bengals fans' radar because obviously you have Joe Burrow. There's a lot of issues on this team. One of them is not quarterback. Bengals fans should be begging for quarterbacks to be on the board whenever they're picking in this draft because then someone is going to move up. Someone is going to come get Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, and the Bengals are going to be able to get some serious value for a pick there and move back and still be able to attack a team need while having some more value in the middle round. So I think the start of this draft, regardless of where the Bengals are picking, is going to be absolutely crucial for how the future of this team shakes out.
Yeah,
I can't believe I didn't laugh there when Reed just came in and grabbed a cookie.
One of the more absurd reasons to come into the studio.
He just came, walked right in the studio, grabbed the cookie, walked right out. That was
one of the more absurd reasons I've ever seen somebody march into the studio. I thought he was getting his laptop.
Anything of need.
He just came in and took a cookie.
What kind of cookies? We got cookies in the studio?
There's a ton of cookies. You want to show the people?
Yeah, I'll show the people. Hang on. Give me a second.
Yeah, we got cookies on the desk over here. The bear brought them the other day.
The bear.
And we've been making them work ever since. Oh yeah, look at that. Look at that.
Yeah, we got
some good
sugar
cookies.
We
Some
got
good
some
cookies. For the
snowballs.
radio, on the camera, you can see cookies right
Yeah.
now.
Got some
I'm
M&M
definitely coming in
cookies.
tomorrow.
There you
If
go.
we knew all we had to do to get you to the office was have some cookies in here, we could have figured that out.
It's just
They should order
nonetheless,
they should order the number one as of right now.
Number one quarterback. So I sat here preseason and I was like, oh, Shadur's not a top 5. He's so distantly the top quarterback in this draft class. I don't even think it's close.
Yeah, I don't think it's remotely close.
Like
anymore.
remotely close. No.
well. Let me ask you, because me and you were on the same page with Shador in the offseason, Jake.
Yeah.
Now he's distanced himself from everybody else, but he's very good, no doubt, but he distanced himself from everybody else because I feel like every other quarterback got worse. Carson Beck got worse. Quinn
Oh,
Ewers
I
got
100%
worse.
agree.
Cam Ward's good, but I don't think
Cam
anyone's
Ward-
circling him.
Cam Ward getting to 2 is going up from like 7. The other guys that
Yeah.
were in the Shadur conversation preseason have fallen almost completely out of the first round, talking about Ewers and Beck. It was those 3 in the conversation for who's QB1 coming into the season.
Yeah.
And I would kind of shoehorn Milroe in there, which obviously after last week we see that he probably won't even be a first-round pick anymore. But again, I'm not so sure. Is a 6'3", 225 quarterback that runs like he does really not going to get picked? We've seen crazier things happen in the draft. I think there's 3 or 4 quarterbacks that could still go in the first round, but I do think Shadur is the only one in the conversation for that like top 1, 2, 3 pick.
By the way, I know people dislike Shador in Colorado, but any dude that goes for his legs like that again needs to be kicked out. The fact
Yeah.
that targeting,
That was terrible.
unincidental targeting, guys get tossed. Like when guys hit above the shoulder pads, and sometimes it's not. There's no intent to do that. That's just kind of how the play results when you have 2 bodies kind of moving in different directions, whatever. That was gross what Kansas did this past weekend, and I know Colorado, they talk a lot. I know he talks a lot, but that's sports. Everyone talks. It doesn't make any sense to me. I thought that was messed up. I don't get how Moore was not made of that. He went for his legs. I saw someone say if he hadn't had his leg bent at a certain angle, everything in his leg would have shattered with where he made contact. That's messed up. Something should be done about that. Kansas should not be okay with that, but it is what it is. But I thought that was messed up.
No, it was terrible. Yeah, it was absolutely terrible.
Very dirty hit.
The loss was bad too. How about Colorado? Look, there was by the way, this past weekend, a lot of good football, a lot of bad football.
I think it was a lot. I think it was more good football. I think it was
good football.
I think it was good football, right? I think.
What do you mean by, like, are we talking about 2024 18-year-old good football when good football is only if it's 50-50? Like that Alabama game, Oklahoma played some of the best defense I've ever seen in a football game. I mean, they had 8 guys gap across the line every single time Alabama tried to run a quarterback draw, which they tortured LSU with 2 weeks ago. Like, that game wasn't pretty from a score perspective, but it was really good football. I think it was pretty good all week, and even the NFL slate was great. But, yeah, so many teams had control of their own destiny of the rest of their season and just choked it away. So many teams. And that's such a frustrating part because that's all you play for all year long.
Yeah.
Is to have a chance to control your own destiny. Alabama had it. Ole Miss, even to a degree, had it. I know they weren't going to go to the SEC championship, but if they won out, they were going to the playoff. Colorado had it. What was a couple weeks ago, UC had it. I mean, now obviously that's snowballed, but they had it and they choked it away. Like, so many teams this year, I feel like we've talked about have been in that conversation of, oh, just win out and you're in and you get a chance. And I wouldn't want to play them. And then we've seen teams choke it away. And I guess that's what everyone points to as being a positive of this 12-team playoff, is these games at the end of the season matter. It's a 2-loss Alabama picking up a 3rd loss matters. You didn't just forget about them weeks ago. But I guess my question now, and where I keep sitting at looking at these rankings, I don't see 12 teams that deserve a chance at a national championship.
No, and that's kind of frustrating. But I will say that there has been, like, I think our group chat was talking about it this weekend. It has been exciting to, like, see all these scenarios play
It
out.
has been.
Like,
You're
it's
right.
like, and the fact that there's pretty much an infinite number of scenarios that can still happen right now to see, like, there's no way of knowing who's going to be in the final 12. There's no way of knowing right now because everybody keeps losing games. You're going to have a 3-loss SEC team in. That's going to happen because everybody loses games. Everybody's lost. It would have been crazy to see what would have happened if Army would have beaten Notre Dame, because then you're seriously looking at no Big 12 team in the playoff.
If we're in a 4-team
that
playoff,
happens.
is there no SEC? If we're still in a 4-team playoff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There wouldn't be, right?
OSU beats Oregon. There's two spots.
Texas would be in, right?
Texas loses to A&M next week.
If Texas were to lose to A&M, then there wouldn't be. But
or not win the conference.
I think
that would be crazy.
Yeah, I think this is it is irony the way that this is all turning out. That it would be the craziest 4-team playoff ever.
The two things that I think have been shown more clear than anything is that there are two major flaws in this system. Equality of schedules. These conferences aren't playing equal schedules. And the first 4 seeds being guaranteed to conference champions. Both of those to me are massive flaws. And they're affecting this playoff greatly right now. And I don't think either of those things are going to be a problem in the near future because I think these conferences are going to make changes.
Yeah, I've been waving that flag from the very beginning when they announced that the conference champs were going to get the guarantee, the auto bids, if that's what you want to call them. I was against that, and I don't know why people didn't comprehend that this would look as bad as it does, because for the 14 playoff route, everyone was screaming how there's 4 spots in the playoff and there's 5 conference champions. And I'm like, yeah, but some of those conferences are so bad they don't deserve to be. They should not. You don't force feed a conference champion into a playoff when they're the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th team in the SEC, or sometimes even the Big Ten is significantly better than the conference champion of the Big 12 or the Pac-12 on any given year. I was against that from the very beginning, just doing the auto bids to conference champions, because when we talk so much about does that team deserve to be in, does this team deserve to be in, someone's going to win the Big 12, and it's not a good conference. Someone's going to win that conference. It's not a good conference. Like the ACC, not a very good conference. Someone's going to win it, and there are the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rated teams in the other conferences that are better than that conference champion. I've been against that from the very beginning, but the bottom line is that's never going to go anywhere because all those conferences who pay a lot of money or get a lot of money or involved in this in some capacity, there has to be some incentive for them to take part in this little model. And that's really what it comes down to. But that's why when people talk about what's fair and not, nothing about this model was done to truly be a fair way to crown a champion. It's a way for the networks to get all the money that they have coming to them, appease all the conferences who also have to split money with all this, and then try to tell the fans that this is the fairest way to crown a champion. It is not. It's just a way that a little bit of everybody wins, even if it dilutes the product to a certain extent. And I think it is with that. With the conference champions being guaranteed auto bids, I'm not a fan of that at all.
I think this, and I know I'm a hater of the 12-team playoff. I think this playoff has done nothing but dilute the college football season. I think it's been an overall an overall negative on the college football season, in my opinion. Okay. I think the perfect system was 8 teams, and you go from there. 4 was too small. You go 8, no humans, computer system for the rankings, BCS system, 8 teams, 5 conference champions. You're good to go. I think 12 is way too many. You just can't look me in the eyes and tell me there's 12 teams in the country right now that can win a national championship. And I don't think if you can't win a national championship, I don't think you should have a chance to win a national championship. I guess that's where I'm coming from.
And let's be clear, it's not like it's shocking that they can't find 12 teams that are worthy of that. They couldn't find 4 teams consistently during the 14 playoff era. You can't convince me if you go back and look at those fields that every year that there were 4 teams good enough to win a national title. Some years it was the odds-on favorite, a gap, and then everybody else. Then there'd be 1 and 2, a favorable 3, and then throw a dog a bone 4. And I, that's really what this comes down to. Last year was the first year where there were 5 legitimate teams that were good enough to compete for a title. Florida State was one of those. Obviously, they got they drew the short straw when it's all said and done. Last year was the most chaotic playoff with the 4-team era, which was fitting to kind of wrap that up. But this year, we're going to force feed some teams in that don't need to be in there. But again, more good quality games. I get that. It'll be fun. But a lot of wasted time on teams that we're making a big deal about that won't win it. Let me ask you guys this, because we talked about Texas a little bit ago. Quinn Ewers is getting an MRI done on his ankle. It could be bad. He could be out for a while. And all the Florida State fans coming out and saying, well, hold on. Isn't how this works. If your quarterback gets hurt, you're immediately eliminated from the playoff. It proves you didn't comprehend how this worked a year ago, and you don't comprehend how it works now. No, this is not even close to being a similar situation. And if you didn't understand it then, I can't get you to understand it now. Jacob, have you seen those responses? A lot of people thinking they're pulling a fast one on people. Oh, I guess Texas, they should be out of the playoffs because Quinn Ewers is hurt. that's not how this works. That's not how it worked last year either, no matter what people want to make it about.
I'm not even going to do the whole their backups Arch Manning thing because I think that's a waste of breath. They play A&M this week. If Quinn can't go and Arch is out there and they get ran out of that stadium by A&M, they shouldn't be in the playoff. I agree. Are we happy? I don't know why Florida State fans think we have to make this declaration now before they play games. We let Florida State play games with their backup quarterback. They looked terrible. They looked terrible. And we knocked them out of the playoff for it. Texas is going to have the same exact shot. If Arch starts this week against A&M, Texas gets the win and plays in the SEC championship, they're in the playoff. If they lose to A&M, they don't look like a playoff team with their backup quarterback, they won't be in the playoff. I think it's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, I mean, if they lose, if they lost their top 2 quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
They were down to their 3rd string quarterback. So
Yeah.
if they lose Arch and Ewers and they're playing their 3rd string quarterback and they're undefeated and then they look terrible, I guess. I don't even know what the scenario would be. But if that's the case, then yeah, then you probably wouldn't be in. But as of right now, you're so far away from that, and Arch Manning is so much better than what Florida State had. And this is coming from a Florida State truther who thought they should have been in last year. It's silly to sit here and complain about that now, especially given the fall from grace that Florida State had this season. Maybe the steepest drop off in the history of college athletics.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that bring up Michigan's fall, if that's what you want to call it. I mean, Michigan's still winning games. They still have NFL talent on the roster. Like, they haven't just totally – I mean, usually with the coaching transition, you're going to see a drop-off. What we're seeing at Florida State is unprecedented. I've never seen something like that. Like, that should not happen. You should not I mean, that's like when LeBron left the Cavs, how bad the Cavs got. That's how quick of a drop-off we've seen from Florida State. I know that's a big gap between NBA and this, but, like, that's the only other thing I could think of is how quickly a team just totally evaporated, just totally, disappeared after something like that. Crazy, nonetheless. All right, we'll step away for a few moments. We'll talk a little Bengals, and we'll close out the show with Jonathan India being traded.
Some Bengals breaking news. Some Bengals breaking news just came in my way. So
we'll tease
that next.
Yeah,
that's right.
All right, more off the bench when we come back. Why do I feel like we just got duped by Elliot? He said there's big Bengals breaking news.
Massive news.
We'll be the judge of that.
In a season that couldn't have gone any worse, it just got worse. Per a statement from the Bengal boys, this is the last season they will be doing a weekly song regarding the Cincinnati Bengals. For those of you that follow on Twitter, they release a song every single week. That will stop after this season. They've broken the Bengal boys, and now we have nothing.
Wow.
When it gets bad, it just gets worse. That's where we're at, Cincinnati. We've lost the Bengal boys. Fire Zach Taylor. Fire him.
My bad.
Like I said, I felt like we got duped.
You're not a Bengal boys guy?
Am I supposed to, like, are they?
You don't know the Bengal boys?
You don't know who the Bengal boys are?
I don't know the Bengal boys.
The Bengal boys, they sing the songs. We had them on last year.
I don't know the Bengal boys.
Man, the biggest Bengals fan in the world doesn't know the Bengal boys.
Yeah, left hand up. That's on me.
Well, I know the Bengal boys, and unfortunately, you're never going to get to know them again because they're leaving us.
Damn. Yeah. I don't get to know the Bengal boys.
So, Casey, what was your fondest song of the Bengal boys?
What was your best memory of the Bengal boy era?
I like the ones with Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard because they were always involved, like singing about sacks. That was fun.
It's funny.
Yeah, there's plenty of them. The Christmas-themed ones were always a blast. Yeah, it's a sad day. I mean, the run in the sun is over.
I'll have to familiarize myself. I'll do some research after the show.
Please.
I'm not even familiar with it, but I'm not a Bengals fan. So
You're not a Bengals fan. Yeah, you're not a Bengals fan.
Yeah. So there's that.
There's nobody in Cleveland that wants to sing songs about your team, so.
Man, that was just uncalled for. Uncalled for.
It wasn't uncalled for. It was just the truth.
Very uncalled for.
There's just nobody jolly enough to sing songs about the Cleveland Browns.
Okay. my team can't win because they can't find a quarterback. Your team has a quarterback and can't win. I mean, we could do this all day. We can just go back and forth, back and forth.
That's fine.
Somehow, some way, the Cincinnati Bengals are favored, however, against the Pittsburgh Steelers this coming up weekend. I'll look at around the AFC. I thought the bottom of the AFC was weak a couple weeks ago. The Chargers might be better than we all thought. I know they're better than we thought coming in. Obviously, the Chargers had that win over the Bengals. They're sitting at 7-3. They have a chance tomorrow night against the Ravens to solidify themselves as a legit threat in the AFC. I think that they took advantage of a bad defense of the Bengals. We haven't seen the offense for the Chargers look like that all season. So, I'd like to believe that a team offensively that looked like that with the defense that the Chargers have is good enough to compete with the best teams in the AFC. They have a chance to prove that tomorrow night against the Ravens, although they're going up against a team similarly built to Cincinnati because their defense is really bad. So we're going to see another offensive onslaught from Justin Herbert and the Chargers tomorrow, and we might buy in and say they're a legitimate threat out there. But record-wise, they will be if they pull off a win against the Ravens. You look at the Dolphins. The Dolphins get Tua back, and all of a sudden they look like a significantly different-looking team. They're competing. They're putting points up. That offense now, complements the defense. There you go. And then the team that I think I'm the most surprised about, the development of Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos. Where are you guys at with the bottom of the AFC? Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, a big one this coming up weekend. Cincinnati's favored. They'd be the first team above 500 they would beat this season. They need to pull that off. But if they pull that off, is it for nothing at this point? Because is the AFC at the bottom as vulnerable as what we thought a few weeks ago?
No, it's not. The Broncos have solidified themselves as a decent team, and I was wrong. It sucks that I'm wrong. I still don't think they're winning a playoff game. I don't think they're that good. But they're good enough to beat the bad teams. Bengals weren't good enough to beat the bad teams this year. You lose to the Patriots, you get what you sow, and unfortunately the Bengals are in that place. They can win out, and they still wouldn't be in. I think the Broncos would still have it because I think the Broncos are going to maybe lose one more game, and that's to us. We'll see if that Chiefs game matters at the end of the year for them, but this is.
They play the Chargers one more time.
They do play the Chargers one more time, but it wouldn't
Browns, Colts, Chargers, Bengals, Chiefs for the Broncos.
Wouldn't shock me if they beat the Chargers. So it's a disaster, and I don't think there's a way. Unfortunately, the Bengals had to beat the Chargers, and when you don't beat the Chargers, you were in the game, you led the game, you lost the game, and there's almost no hope. And even if there was hope, like even if you do win that game, there's still questions as to. Can the Bengals do this on a consistent basis? And I think the answer is unanimously no, they can't. They're not as good as the Denver Broncos this year. I'd argue they're probably not as good as the Miami Dolphins are right now. So are they better than the Colts? Yeah, I'll die on the hill that the Bengals are better than the Indianapolis Colts at this very second. But it's over. It's over. The Bengals lost. The Broncos are 7-5. They are 7-5. They have a winning record at home. They have a winning record on the road. It's done. The Bengals are 1-4 at home. They're 3-3 on the road. You can't climb out of this hole. They can win out, and if you win out, maybe you can. That would be the worst case scenario. Jacob, Casey, and I were talking about this. Yeah. Winning out, getting to 10 wins, and still not getting in. That's the worst case scenario possible. I'd rather just lose out at this point, if we're going to be completely honest. The past 2 weeks didn't go. The past 2 weeks didn't go the Bengals' way.
Right.
You needed help from the Broncos and the Colts and the Dolphins. You needed help. You didn't get any, and now it's done.
Yeah, there's still a chance. I think that chance is winning out. I think that's the only chance. So until the Bengals lose one more game, I'll keep saying they have a little bit of life. It's not very realistic, but it's possible. The Bengals haven't won back-to-back games very often this year at all, and now we're asking them to win once this year. They've won back-to-back games. Now we're asking them to win, 6 in a row? So that's fun. That's a fun place to be. Yeah, I don't think the Bengals are going to make the playoffs, but I still think they have a shot. So I'll keep rooting for it until they're officially dead.
No, and look, I think the playoff chances are very, very light to begin with. I just meant in general, when you look at the bottom of the AFC, a lot of teams, I thought the AFC was horrible. I thought it was bad. And the Chargers, the Dolphins, and now the Broncos are all propping it up at the bottom. Again, just the way it's strengthened up over the last couple of weeks. The team at the bottom that you're most impressed with, is it the Chargers? Is it the Broncos? Dolphins get Tua back. They look like a completely different team. Who's that team at the bottom of the AFC that is one of your favorites right now heading into this when it's all said and done?
I love the Chargers. I absolutely love what the Chargers are doing. I'm a huge Justin Herbert fan. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in all of football. I think with that defense and that coach and that quarterback, it's a scary team to play in the playoffs. I would say that they're the third best team in the AFC. I would take them behind the Chiefs and the Bills in the AFC in terms of teams I believe in making a run.
I mean, it would be silly for me to say this, but I am going to say it. I'm going to say the Miami Dolphins. I think they're not that good. But if you have a healthy Tua and the rest of your roster is healthy, I do think the Miami Dolphins, there's a possibility that they could make some noise. Again, would I bet on the Dolphins to win a playoff game? No. So my answer is probably the Chargers, but I don't want to steal the Chargers from Jacob, so I'm going to say the Miami Dolphins. The other bottom half is the Ravens, who are going to win a playoff game, and that's just how good the AFC is. I think if you had to power rank the top 7 in the AFC right now, the top 7 wild card /playoff teams, I think the Houston Texans come in at 7. And I maybe I'm wrong on that, but I firmly believe that the Denver Broncos probably could beat the Texans at this very second.
Yeah, the Texans, that's the team I was high on coming in. And I would be high if I continued to be high on the Texans moving forward at this point. I know you say the Miami not a good team, but I think that they are. The one thing that he was asked, that Tua was asked in the postgame, and he brought it up, the whole perception of Tua Tagovailoa at this point is it's 2 questions. It's one, can he stay healthy, which is a question mark for a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL. But the second one is, can you play in the cold? And he brought this up in the postgame yesterday after their win. He said, hey, he's excited about the chance to go play the Packers coming up and a chance to put to rest some narratives, the narratives that he can't play in the cold. Well, he's going to have a chance. It's going to be very cold against the Green Bay Packers this coming up weekend at Lambeau. And again, him just bringing that up, if he performs well in the cold, will that change your perception of I know you picked the Dolphins, Elliot, but if he performs well in the cold, will that change your mindset on maybe the ceiling? Will it be raised a little bit if he performs well in the cold on
Sure, it does. Sure, it does. But I would have to see it. Seeing is believing, and until I see that, there's still nothing to me. I think they could potentially. I wouldn't. Let's say this. I wouldn't bet against or bet on the Dolphins in their playoff game, despite where it is. If it was against the Bills in Buffalo in the cold and the snow, maybe I'd bet the Bills in that situation. But I will say that the Dolphins have 3 elite offensive players that are good enough to get into a shootout with the Bills and maybe walk away with a win.
Yeah, I don't believe in the Dolphins doing anything this year. Maybe
I don't seriously believe it, but I couldn't say the Chargers.
Okay, fair enough.
They're the team that's next on the list.
So the team tomorrow night that I'm curious about, obviously the Chargers, they've played their way back. They're very well coached, very good defense. Obviously they can run the football, and they have a very, very, very good quarterback in Justin Herbert. But the Ravens, if they lose another one, are we starting to move them into the fraud category a little bit? Because Lamar has basically been given the MVP since week 3 and 4 of this season. But again, they've been quietly losing some games as of late. Like, would we be putting them in the fraud category if they dropped to 7-5 with the loss against the Chargers tomorrow on Monday, or tonight on Monday night? I keep saying tomorrow, tonight on Monday Night Football.
Fraud from what is my question. Like, what would that tell us that we don't already know about the Ravens? Because I think we know that they're the second best team in this division, at least when it comes to a well-rounded team sense. And if they win, and it's going to be because they're carried by better quarterback play and a monster at running back in Derrick Henry. I don't think people still view the Ravens as like an top level 100% Super Bowl contender AFC team, right? Or am I wrong? Do people still put them with the Chiefs and the Bills? Because if they do, then you're absolutely right. I don't. I haven't for weeks.
I think they're the Bengals this year, except the ball bounced their way a couple times.
Yeah,
that's who they are.
I put the Ravens in the conversation with the Texans and the Chargers, and at this point, maybe even the Broncos. The Steelers are the buffer for me in the AFC North between the Chiefs and the Bills. I don't think the Ravens are a top tier team, and I don't think that tonight would change anything necessarily about how I view the Ravens. I think is my ultimate point.
No, that's just, again, you watch these national shows, Ravens being propped up, Lamar still being talked about as MVP. I can't put Lamar in the MVP category. You're sitting at 7-5. Tonight you lose a head-to-head against Justin Herbert. But no, it is wild. The AFC is changing. The bottom was super weak. The top was super strong. Now I think the top is weakening, and the bottom is strengthening big time in the AFC. When you look at the emergence of the Broncos, the Chargers, the Dolphins, who aren't even in a playoff spot, they're propping up the bottom as well. But the Ravens are kind of weakening. And the loss against the Browns on Thursday Night Football did what for the perception of the Pittsburgh Steelers? Because I was very high on them. They were averaging 30 points a game since Russell Wilson has been named the starting quarterback. You complement that with one of the best defenses in the NFL. They clearly had a chance to beat the Cleveland late. Obviously, rivalry games like that, the result can go either way. Did the loss against Cleveland change your outlook on Pittsburgh as far as being the top team in the division right now?
Not really, just because of the conditions. I think it was a really, really hard game to play in to really get anything going, and the ball bounced the Browns' way more than it bounced the Steelers' way. I think that's really ultimately what happened on Thursday night. I think it was a good game between two teams that didn't really make mistakes. And then you have the Bengals and the Browns the next 2 weeks. We'll find out exactly what the Steelers are doing. If they go on a 3-game losing streak or even drop 2 out of these 3, then yeah, there's big-time questions that have to be asked about Pittsburgh and whether that offense can play against some of the better defenses, being 2 of these next 3 games against Cleveland, and then you have the Eagles right after that. It's a hard stretch for Pittsburgh. If the Bengals take care of business this Sunday, then, yeah, there's big questions about the Steelers. And then you start having the conversation of, well, are we sure that they're better than the Ravens? But as of right now, yeah, I'm pretty confidently still on the Steelers. That's the number 1 team in the AFC North.
All right, good stuff. We'll focus on NFL, college football more throughout the week. But we appreciate everyone hanging out here today. We'll step away for a few moments. We'll talk a little bit of Reds baseball on the other side. Jonathan India, a Red no more, traded to the Kansas City Royals. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Not surprised that Jonathan India was moved, but what about the return that the Reds got for him? How do we feel about that? We'll get to all of that and more off the bench when we come back. So, Elliot, you had the news broke to you about the Reds trade over the weekend. Jonathan India, a Red no more. Now, Jacob, you've been on the Reds need to move on from Jonathan India for a while. Now, this wasn't a hot take. A lot of people had that take. I was kind of in the middle. I'm not surprised they moved on from Jonathan India, but what did catch me by surprise was when Terry Francona got hired, there's multiple interviews he's done where he said he couldn't wait to get to work with Jonathan India. And I remember leaning your way saying, hey, he's definitely going to get moved. It just doesn't make sense with you look at the roster and just the trajectory of a lot of the up and coming prospects. It just doesn't make sense on where you would use him, where you would place him, how you would pay him, how much you'd pay him, yada, yada. But then I started like, well, maybe they're not going to move on from him, because when you hear Terry Francona on multiple media hits say he can't wait to get to work with Jonathan India, and talent on this, it made me feel a different way about that, especially when you had Jonathan India speak out about, hey, needing to go out and get a manager that's going to hold this team accountable. That stands out to me. But ultimately, Red for the year, had a very good run with the Cincinnati Reds. He's now a Royal. You guys' takeaway, Jonathan India, a Red no longer.
Yeah, I was at Carlo and Johnny. On
Did you meet him?
Friday. I did not.
Not Carlo or Johnny?
Neither of them.
That's a shame.
Neither of them were there. But I was at Carlo and Johnny. My phone was off completely, and I got a bunch of texts. I'm not checking these texts. Well, I got one from Jacob, and I was like, all right, I'll just check Jacob's real quick. It was just random. I didn't know if it was a work thing, so I clicked on Jacob's name. He's like, did you hear it? I'm like, what? He's like, oh, you don't know. I'm like, no, I don't.
Just kept dragging him on.
I don't know. And he said, yeah, Jonathan India is no longer Cincinnati Red. He's been traded. So I'm not shocked it happened. I am pleasantly surprised that it did, because you kind of just ran through it there, Kidder. It's if you have no place for him, and the Reds, if healthy, do not have a place for Jonathan India, then you trade him, and you get value. They got value. I'd argue they got more value than what Jonathan India was probably worth.
Yeah, I was shocked.
You get a starting pitcher in today's market. You get a little bit of control of this starting pitcher. He's going to help your starting rotation. I love it. I think it's a phenomenal trade. I thought the talks were over after the Reds brought on Nick Martinez again. I'm pleasantly surprised this went through. Jonathan India, I think, got a bad rap in this city for a long time. I don't know why that is. He played when he was hurt. He played hard. I did think he was a leader of the team. Didn't go his way. Didn't win a lot of games, but it's what it is. Jonathan India, I'm going to miss you. and the Royals get their leadoff guy, which I think is funny because I think many people in this town denounced the fact that Jonathan India could be a leadoff hitter. Well, the Royals said, I don't care about his defense. I just want a leadoff hitter. And that's what they got. So good for Jonathan India. I do think it's funny that both these two guys were teammates at Florida. So they got traded for each other just to swap, an even swap. And I like it. I like it for both teams, if we're going to be honest. Jonathan India gets a fresh start in KC, and we get a starting pitcher in a rotation that desperately needs depth. So I'm very, very pleasantly surprised that this happened. This is a move that championship caliber teams make.
No question about that.
When you need to get rid of a guy that probably won't play, you get him for a starting pitcher, ready now talent. So now you have money to spend elsewhere. The Reds won this trade. If you had to just ask somebody off the cuff, maybe they would say the Royals did. I don't think so. I think the Reds got the better player here. And I'm very, very excited to see what they do next.
In a perfect world, that guy's not in your lineup. So trade for someone that is. I think in the offseason, you have to operate as if everyone on your team is going to play 140 of the 162 games. Otherwise, obviously depth is important. Having backups are important. You need some bench backs. That's why you re-signed Santiago Espinal. I'm not signing a guy that can return me a Brady Singer to be a bench bat. I think Brady Singer's going to help this team a lot more than Jonathan India will, assuming, again, that those guys are healthy. And that's how I would like to operate in the offseason. That's how I've been asking for a long time. I think the best debate for keeping Jonathan India, or the best argument for keeping Jonathan India in Cincinnati is, well, what if Matt McClain gets hurt? Well, if that's the best thing going for you, then I think you should be traded. That's just how I view professional sports as a whole, especially when you're playing with one arm tied behind your back, depending on how much payroll you're willing to give. I think getting Brady Singer in a trade takes a lot of pressure off the Reds' shoulders of getting more starters in the free agency, and then now they're going to be able to focus on the bats. I certainly think more bats are coming. I think outfield's coming. I think an infielder's coming. I think the Brady Singer trade is phenomenal. I thought it was over once Martinez signed, but I think getting both of them is absolutely a great move for the Cincinnati Reds.
The India thing, too, ran pretty stale at the end, and I think he was frustrated, very, very openly frustrated with the organization, with the front office at the end of the season. You heard it when David Bell got fired, and I think that his fate was sealed right around there, right when he started talking to the media, saying that the clubhouse wasn't led well enough or whatever he said. I don't want to misquote him. But his fate was sealed, and the Reds did the right thing. They traded him for a guy that's going to help the team next season immediately. I love it very much. I'm very sad that Ian Jabot is no longer with the team. That makes me think that another reliever is going to get signed at some point too, because that was a guy I thought was good enough to make the roster. And I'm pretty shocked that he is not returning, given the fact that Buck Farmer is also not returning. Justin Wilson's not returning. So there's some names that have to be replaced here. There's some guys, there's some positions that need to be fixed. But it was if you're a fan of my Twitter account, and if you've been a supporter of the Eat Train 513 Twitter account, this was a tough weekend. Jonathan India, I'm the captain of that fan club, and then the Ian Jabot London Bridge has fallen bandwagon. Both of them are out of Cincinnati. Tough weekend.
Full rebrand?
Has to be a rebrand. I have to pick two new guys. I don't know who my two guys will be.
Is the pick going to stay the same, where like your favorite players are just not good at baseball?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Probably be it. In other news, Santiago Espinal is coming back. Santiago Espinal is returning to the Cincinnati Reds on a 1-year deal. Good for him. He deserved it. He gives us the depth. I wouldn't say he's a great baseball player, but he's good enough to fill the gaps when you need him. So he will be the new Jonathan India, I guess.
Yeah, probably. Better defender.
Singer 33 starts for Singer last year. That would have been the most starts of any Red last year. Obviously, I think Hunter Green was about, 26 starts. I mean, bringing in a veteran pitcher who has shown that he could pitch deep into a season and not regress as the season goes on. I think that's key. That's big. We've talked about, of course, some of the younger guys having to improve from year to year, but bringing in veterans who you know what you get with them, assuming that they're healthy. Again, you mentioned a little bit ago, you thought with the Martinez, when they got that deal done, that, okay, that would probably put to rest this opportunity here. But you get Singer and Martinez, and you have Nick Lodolo, you have Hunter Green, you have Andrew Abbott, and maybe Andrew Abbott could be on the move too. Jacob, you've been talking about that's a good trade piece as well. But Rhett Lauder was great in September, obviously going to be fighting for a spot in this rotation next season, no doubt. But what is that rotation now? I mean, is it as simple as just the names we threw out there? Is that the rotation for the Reds in 25?
I keep seeing people say Martinez is a starter.
He will be.
He will be a starter
I think so.
the whole way?
I think to start the season he will be.
Maybe to start
Because I don't think Lauder's starting up.
You don't think Lauder will start up?
No.
Wow. I think Lauder does start up, and I guess that's where I'm not seeing Martinez being a bona fide starter.
If Lauder's up, then I wouldn't. But I think with a qualifying offer, I think he's going to start as the starter, and then Lauder will start in AAA. He'll be up soon. I just don't think they're going to start the year with him up.
I don't think they're going to let a $21 million guy not start at least a large portion of the season. But I don't like just coming into the season with Nick Martinez being a starter in the rotation. Kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit. I know he has that ability, and God knows he did it last year. But I do think that's a little bit, good pitcher is a good pitcher no matter where you are. But Nick Martinez in the starting rotation, that's not how I would have it. I would have it Hunter Green 1, Nick Lodolo 2. I would have Rhett Lauder probably 3, Brady Singer 4, and Andrew Abbott 5 is how I would at least see it off the rip. Now, it could change. It could vary. I don't know what they'll do, but that's at least how I see it as of this very second. Nick Martinez still gives you the long relief out of the pen, and then once one of those guys goes down, easy swap, you put him into the rotation.
Yeah, and I think that's the most likely option there is that he's not a starter, but he will be whenever you need one. And that's going to be not just if one guy goes down, he's fully in the rotation. I'm saying if a guy needs to miss a start here or there, Martinez is your spot start guy, which is a hell of a spot start guy to have in your bullpen. That's a great thing for the Reds. The only reason I don't think Rhett Lauder is going to start up is because I don't think you need to. And I don't think he would have pitched last year had they not needed to. So I think they might go back to the what's the word I'm looking for? The path or the course through the minors that they had envisioned before the injuries at the end of last season, which probably did not involve him on this year's opening day rotation. So my guess would be Green, Lodolo, Abbott, Singer, Martinez.
Yeah.
And then you have Lauder in AAA, and he comes up relatively quickly if he continues to kill it in AAA. I mean, I'm talking 3, 4, 5 starts, and he comes up and he kills it in the majors, and you move Martinez to the bullpen. I think that's a great way to operate.
What about Burnsy?
Would love to see him this year. I think the quickest we would see him is about when we saw Lauder.
Any chance he goes to the bullpen?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I want one of them to go to the bullpen. Where does Graham Ashcraft, does he just become a full bullpen guy this year, or is he just not going to play?
I don't think Graham Ashcraft's going to be wearing red.
That's what I thought, but he hasn't been traded. I want him to be traded, but I don't know. I don't know what he's worth.
I don't know how he could play after last year.
That's what I'm saying. That's how I feel too. I don't know where you move him. Same thing with Connor Phillips. How does Connor Phillips ever fit into this?
Connor Phillips almost has to be traded.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know what the plan is. I imagine there's going to be more trades going forward, but some of these guys just don't have a spot anymore.
Thoughts on, and again, there's plenty of time to dive into the pressure for certain players heading into 25. I know it's late November at this point, but this does put a lot of pressure on. It gives the Reds options moving forward because I do think it's a big year for Nick Lodolo because we know what he's capable of when he's healthy. We've seen him have spurts of greatness. Like there was a point last year where everyone was like, we know Hunter Green's the ace, but at times you watch Nick Lodolo who looked more dominant. There was a stretch early on last season where I'm like, I know everyone's high on Hunter Green, but like I'm watching Nick Lodolo and I'm like, I think this guy, Hunter Green's the more exciting pitcher. I thought Lodolo looked like he had the better stuff. Obviously Hunter Green, fantastic season. Finished his top 10, number 8 in Cy Young voting. We know how great of a season he ended up having. But the same thing with Nick Lodolo last year, the same year before and the year before that. The guy can't stay healthy. I think it's a big question mark season for Nick Lodolo because we know where he stands in this rotation, but he has to keep that spot in that rotation because if we have another injury-filled season of Nick Lodolo, what's the outlook on him moving forward, big picture? Because we know how talented he is when he's healthy. He just can't stay healthy. Your thoughts on Nick Lodolo?
I trust him. I believe in him. But if you're not going to be healthy, then you're worthless. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it's just a fact of the matter. Nick Senzel was never healthy one bit. And unfortunately, when you can't stay on the field, there's no way to judge how good of a pitcher you are. We can sit here and say that when you're healthy, yada, yada, yada. But if you're not healthy, you're nothing. And that's unfortunately the direction that I believe Nick Lodolo could go. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's, his career's over by any means. I just need to see him be healthy. I need to see him have a complete season one time. That's and I can't say anything about him until it happens. He's not a bad pitcher. He's a solid pitcher, but you have to be contributing on a weekend basis. If you don't, and if you fall off the tank, seemingly like him and Andrew Abbott do every year, it's hard to evaluate talent.
Yeah, I've been a Hunter Green's the ace guy for a while now, and I think it's just because of the question marks around Nick Lodolo. I mean, he's great whenever he's in there pitching, but he's not in there pitching a whole lot. And it's really, really frustrating at this point in his career because we should be having debates about who our ace is.
Yeah.
We should be having these questions about who's the better pitcher in Cincinnati because when they're both out there, it certainly is close, but I can't rely on Nick Lodolo to have 20-plus starts in the season. It's just not something that I'm going to bring myself to expect because we haven't seen it yet. So hopefully I'm wrong, and hopefully this year rolls around and he's able to stay healthy and protect his arm and his shin and whatever else he can find a way to bang up, and he can start for most of the year because it would be great. And he is a massive, massive key to this Reds team's success. Having this pitching lineup or rotation healthy this season is a huge key to what this team's going to be able to do. It should be a strength of this team, at least on paper. And they should thrive as long as they're all healthy. And that's going to come down to Nick Lodolo as the headliner of that question because we know Andrew Abbott has the concerns as well as you get later in the season. Singer really hasn't in his career, but with all pitchers, injuries are always a concern. And it's going to be the eyes focused on Lodolo, on whether or not he's going to be able to stay healthy all year long. But it's really everyone because though you do have Nick Martinez, and we've talked about how he's been able to come from the bullpen to the starting rotation, and that'll be a great thing for the Bengals, or not the Bengals, for the Reds to have as wiggle room here. But I think you get one or two injuries, you're in a bad spot. I mean, we saw what happened at the end of last year when you didn't have starters. You can't play baseball games. It's embarrassing to watch. Just keep running these guys out there and asking them to do stuff that they're not supposed to be able to do.
That's the craziest part too. The Reds, I think, had I want to say a winning record down the stretch with no starting pitchers available. David Bell though got fired.
Why I said
right,
Bengals is because we have some breaking news. Not really breaking news. But, it was a quote I was reading in my head while also speaking. Shouldn't do that. It gets all jumbled up in my mouth. But Joe Mixon had a quote about the Bengals. Those are always fun.
I don't want to hear it.
You don't want to
use it as a tease.
Should we just end it?
Use it as a tease. No, use it as a tease for post radio, just because we got to wrap up radio quick. But this will be our post radio conversation. If you want to dive for our radio listeners, head to Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Subscribe to Chatterbox Sports, of course, and watch today's Off the Bench for our post radio portion of the show. But that wraps it up for us on radio. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. All right, and we are back. I don't have to do the radio voice. We're back. Off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
You actually don't ever have to do the radio.
Correct.
voice.
You can just do your voice.
You can just do your voice.
I suck either way, so it don't matter. I'm trying to figure out which one I'm less worse at. Is that a thing? But
Less
trying to beat
worse.
people to the punch. I'm just trying to beat people to the punch. That's all. But yeah, Joe Mixon. I'm trying to figure out who's more obsessed in this broken up relationship. Bengals fans who are mad that he's gone, or Joe Mixon. Like,
no,
who is losing the breakup?
Yeah, I power rank it number one by a mile. Bengals fans that say the Bengals season is this way because they don't have Joe Mixon, they're the worst. Number two is Joe Mixon. Number three is normal Bengals fans.
Okay.
That's my power ranking of this situation. Joe Mixon, before we get into this quote, just take a look at his stats from yesterday's game against the Titans. Can we do it when he plays well? You might as well do it every game, right? 14 carries for 22 yards. That's 1.6 yards per carry. Unable to get into the end zone. He did have 5 catches for 20 yards. So
yikes.
Yeah. Joe Mixon was asked about, I actually don't know what. It doesn't say the question here, but this is his answer. Man, it's good we didn't do this on radio. When it comes down to it, I'm going to do what the coach wants me to do. But at the same time, I'm going to play football. That's just what it is. You're not going to turn me into a robot. One thing that I can appreciate here in Houston is they know how to utilize my skill set. The Houston Texans are one of 2 teams in the NFL with a less successful rushing offense than the Cincinnati Bengals.
Is that right?
Yeah, rushing EPA per play, they're 31, Bengals are 30.
Really?
Yeah. Joe Mixon gets a ton of carries. Oh, he's doing great with his carries.
Joe Mixon, man. Clearly he wanted to stay, and the Bengals just didn't see that it was a good fit. I don't think that you keep Joe Mixon under any circumstance after last season.
No.
There's just no world where it makes sense. If you wanted to turn your offense into the Texans this year, I'd argue the addition of Joe Mixon has changed the identity of what was a really good team. I think having him there rushing for 40 times a game makes C.J. Stroud look not so great anymore. And I think you're seeing the Texans, and I said it earlier in the show, but it was like, if you had to power rank the top 7 teams in the AFC, the playoff teams, I think they're last. I don't trust the Houston Texans to win a game because if your offensive game plan is to run Joe Mixon 35 times, and that doesn't work, then you're going to have to ask a quarterback who hasn't done it all year to be Superman. And it's just not a method of success.
Like, and by the way, I do think the reason they're using Joe Mixon as much as they are is because that offensive line is absolute garbage in Houston. Like, it's one of the worst offensive lines. That's one reason why when people talk about the CJ Stroud regressing in year 2, there is a sophomore slump thing going on, no doubt about it. But that offensive line is not helping. Now, again, when you deal with Bengals fans, no one's going to give quarterbacks the benefit of the doubt playing with the bad offensive line because we watched Joe Burrow lead a team to a Super Bowl while getting sacked 70 times. So people won't be as forgiving with that. I understand that. But I do think one thing that has greatly led to C.J. Stroud's regression has been that offensive line. On the second part of that, some of Joe Mixon's best seasons in Cincinnati were when the Bengals had some of the worst offensive lines. It almost seemed the worse the offensive line, the better Joe Mixon was, especially pre-Joe Burrow. There was a stretch where it was god-awful, and he was putting up some of his best numbers. Joe Mixon's been very, very good for Houston, no doubt about it. But instead of us being able to sit back and say, man, good for him, it was almost a good breakup. It made sense for Cincinnati. It made sense for him. This should be a good breakup. Instead, we keep bringing it up because the toxic fans that keep saying, oh, this team would be better if they had Mixon, then we get them quieted down. And then you get Joe Mixon who brings it up out of nowhere. And you cleaned up that quote, didn't you? I thought he cussed. I thought he swore in that.
Did he? I don't think so.
No, he called out he called out the media. There's another quote in that article that he called out the fake ass media. Now remember when we had Jay Morrison was on with us last week. I made the joke about, hey, I don't think Joe Mixon's still sending you Christmas cards. He blocked, like he would not take questions from Jay Morrison. There was some Bengals media he would not take questions from. Jay Morrison was one of them. Because Jay Morrison kind of calls it down the middle. He's not fanboy mediaing it up like most do. And I just found that interesting. But he said the fake ass media in Cincinnati with the agenda that they had, but he continuously bringing up Cincinnati, you're making it very hard to be happy for the success you're having. We won't poke fun at the bad game he had yesterday, but why are you talking like that when you're coming off of a bad game? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, there are some people in the chat saying that quote's from earlier this year, but regardless of when that was published, it's the same sentiment to me. I think to trash on an organization you came from when you did well, they gave you more carries than basically anyone in the league, and you were able to, have high levels of production in Cincinnati, and they let you go to the place you wanted to go to, and you got a big extension, and you're on a playoff team. Like I don't understand why there's so much animosity between Joe Mixon and the Bengals. Feels like every step of the way they followed exactly what he wanted.
Yeah.
No, the quote, you're right, was from earlier. It was just the article that came out, BengalsTalk.com, a little bit ago that had that quote in there nonetheless. But, hey, here in Dayton, we have our next radio show coming up here in the studio, so I got to bounce. So I got to get out of the studio. But you guys can continue, or we can pick this up again tomorrow, whatever you guys feel like.
Kinner, bye-bye.
All right, adios.
Adios.
Love you, Kinner.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
None of you guys do. No, none of you guys do. I know.
Bye, Kinner.
Bye, Kinner.
All right.
Just the boys.
Just the fellas. How are you, Casey?
No, I'm doing all right.
You have any thoughts on the Jonathan India for Brady Singer trade?
I mean, the only thing that I have any comments on, I'm going to take this.
Yeah, I can just take these off now. That's great.
It was a calculated risk. That's what I would call it, a very calculated risk.
Yeah.
Because if Matt McClain doesn't work out, then you're screwed anyway. So you're banking on him having success. And if he was going to be successful, where does India play, right? This gives you at least a player that you know is going to give you a starting role.
In the perfect world, he actually helps your team.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And every year, like if you look at the statistics, he's only increased his innings pitched every season or every year that he's been able to pitch. He's only gotten better. Talking about Singer here. And India, he's been up and down. So, I mean, I think for me, I look at it as a move that was a calculated risk, and it's a way to shore up a room that has had a lot of injury concerns, and a guy that you might be able to rely on here in the near future. And also, too, to put a little cherry on top of this.
Presented by United Dairy Farmers. The pitching staff, I think, is one of our stronger, like, places where we've seen development. Like, we've seen true progression out of our younger talent there in the pitching room. So if he's going to if there's any more room to grow, I think he can still do that here in Cincinnati. I don't think he's like a finished product by any stretch of the imagination, is what I'm getting at. He also paid his parents' debt off a few years ago. I saw that video circulating again when he came over here.
So he's a good guy,
Great guy. It's always good. I do think it was kind of funny just after the trade was made, looking back on, like, you know, the last basically 3 years where this has been a huge cloud hanging over Jonathan India's head. Feel good for him that he's out of here. You can just focus on baseball, because it has to be grueling to go there every day and try to be a leader of a team when all you hear when you step off the field is that you're going to be traded. That has to suck.
Yeah, or be the leader of a team when you're not really contributing as much as you'd like to be.
Right.
It's clearly he was playing second fiddle to whatever rookie was going to come up. And maybe that's a testament to the fact that he wasn't as good of a baseball player as many believed he was. I stand on the hill that he was very good he was solid this year. He helped them when they needed help. Having depth like him is unbelievably important in Major League Baseball in a 162 game season. I'm sad about it a little bit, but I'm not like upset. Like it was an objectively good move, and I'm excited to see how the Reds fare this year. I'm not going to say that they're like a playoff team. After what happened last year, I'm not going to come into this season with expectations. Right. I'm just going to try to ride into the year and see where Terry Francona leads me. That's what I'm going to be. I'm going to change my mindset completely, and we're going to go from there, because I can't do the get heartbroken thing again. Right. I will say I think it's going to be different this year. I think you're going to see a different Reds organization than you've seen the past 6 years, whatever it was with David Bell. I do think having a manager will fix some of these issues, not all of them. It doesn't make the league's worst defensive team into a good defensive team. It doesn't make the team that gets picked off at second base more than anybody else automatically not get picked off at all. But you will start to see some of the mistakes get cleaned up. That's what I'm excited for.
I do think it was relatively funny that you are India's biggest fan.
Sure.
President of the fan club.
Sure.
You were the most adamantly against the only thing that could have kept him on the Reds, and that's Matt McClain to center field.
Yeah, because I care. Yeah, because
but that's the one thing that could have kept India on the Reds long term.
Putting Matt McClain in center field on paper is great, but if he's not going to stay healthy, and if he gets hurt running into a wall or running into God knows whoever's in right field next season,
yeah,
like it's just not worth that risk. Play him at second base. He can't get hurt there. He shouldn't be able to get hurt there, and ride with it there. But yeah, I was like, if that's the trade off, no, I'm good. Matt McClain stays at second. India's gone, but it's good. It's good to have fresh.
That's
start.
probably why they tried that, right? Like,
yeah.
Hey, if this works, we don't trade India. If it doesn't, we have to. Type of thing.
Yeah. Ed, by the way, Ed in the chat says, I have an autographed India ball. Should I keep it or sell it? I'd probably keep it until what he does in KC. He might be better in Kansas City.
Is it like a Reds ball? Does it have his number 6 on it? Like, could you just say it's a Royals ball?
I imagine it's just going to be
India number 6 would be my guess.
Yeah.
Is he wearing 6 in Kansas City?
Well, that's a good question. Who wore 6 last year?
I don't know.
Royals roster by jersey number 2024.
Everett says, imagine having a football team lose 4 straight games and your biggest concern is a middle school in Tennessee.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that? Or do we want to talk about it?
I don't know, but I bought a Musketeers shirt.
Drew Waters looks like has the number 6 for Kansas City. Did he play last year? Don't know who that is, but he was number 6. Here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say about the University of Cincinnati suing a bunch of 6-year-olds. If you look at the logo, it is a direct copy and paste. Like, have you seen the picture?
I've seen all the pictures.
It's a direct like they legitimately stole it. Like it's hard to like steal something as obviously as they stole our logo. So UC has a bunch of people that looks out for people stealing their logos and trademarks. That's what you do. You hire lawyers and they do that.
I have no problem up to this point.
Okay, hold on. Okay, that's where I am too.
You're good up until this point.
Say, hey, 8-year-olds, you can't use our logo. That's our logo. You can't have the logo. We own the logo.
If you stop there,
right there,
I am good.
We're good.
I'm good.
Telling them they can't be the Bearcats.
That's where you lose me.
Is objectively pathetic.
That's where you lose me.
You can't just say they can't have the mascot. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's a mascot. You don't own the Bearcat world. You don't just own the Bearcat, the animal, the Bearcat.
You're telling me there's no other Bearcats anywhere?
Yeah,
because they have it copywritten for sports?
Well,
is that what it was?
No, there's another Bearcat. There's another Bearcat with a C. There is one Bearcat
Sam
with
Houston
a K,
is K.
But it's pretty silly. Yeah, Ed wants to clear up. It's the firm. Correct. It is 100% the firm doing this. The University of Cincinnati hires the firm to look for these things. Suing for the logo is a non-story. You can't copy and paste things. I can't go to school and I can't legit copy an entire article from some journal and turn it into my teacher. I get caught for plagiarism. I get kicked out. That's the rules. Those are the rules. I don't understand what the point was telling them they couldn't be the Bearcats, because all you do now is you just give ammunition to that school in Norwood, and I have to keep hearing about it until the sun burns out.
Oh, no.
If the first thing that happens this year was if Xavier loses, or if UC loses to Xavier in the crosstown, well, I guess you were too focused on your lawsuits. Or if you win, oh, I guess you go back to your lawsuit. It's just I have to hear about it. I don't want to hear about it. Let the kids be the Bearcats and move on. They can't have the logo. They can have the nickname. That's just the part I don't get.
Alex says they're coming for the Bearcat Bash and Chatterbox Bearcats next.
They probably should. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the rules. I don't know what the rules are.
Whatever the rules are, UC is a sad poverty school because of this.
No,
bottom of the barrel.
Come on.
Poverty school.
Come on.
This is one of the worst stories I've ever seen for a school that claims to be not bottom of the barrel.
Let me tell you my story, because my school got sued by New Hampshire College or something.
Very
like that.
fun.
New Hampshire University for the same thing. And we had to tear up our logo from the center of our basketball court. And we couldn't play our high school games there until that was taken out. And so we played in the middle school until we got it completely taken care of. They had to cut out all the circles out of our wooden chairs in the office because I had the logo. It was a full ordeal. But we we copy and pasted the logo everywhere, and it's not our logo. But we still got to keep Wildcats.
Do the Vikings not have a problem?
The Vikings.
But isn't that a copy and paste Vikings logo?
For sure. But I don't think the Vikings care.
Where's Wisconsin for Lakota West? They're not making a call about that W?
Yeah.
Like, this happens a lot of places.
Everyone. It's just how it works. I don't understand what the conversation was. Maybe I haven't read any good explanation, but I don't understand telling the kids that you can't be the Bearcats makes any sense whatsoever.
That's sad.
I don't understand how that comes into play, because now again Xavier just gets the free shot. Well, we'll pay for everything. You just be the Musketeers. Which is a brilliant move by them. It's an A+ move.
The easiest layup of all time.
It's a slam dunk, and they get that free little bit, and now we have to sit here and take it. I saw Chad Brendel doing his best to defend it. I love Chad very much, and he was 100% right about the logo. Direct copy and paste. You can't steal somebody else's logo. I didn't see him say anything about like not letting the kids be named the Bearcats. I'll have to go back and look at his Twitter. I know he had a hell of a Twitter weekend, Chad. My guy Chad did. We'll have to go see. But it doesn't make sense to me, and it just gives your enemies free fire, and I hate that. I absolutely hate it.
In other news, is UC a top 10 basketball team in the country?
Okay, so is UC a top 10 basketball team? Yes, they are. Good
think
question.
they are.
Great question. They're unbelievable. Ed says, I'm starting a new podcast called Chatterbox Sports. Elliot, send me all the logos. Again, Ed, I think where we're getting confused is you can't copy the logos.
No one has a problem with them copywriting the logo.
The logos, you can't copy the logos.
That's fine.
Why are they not allowed to be named the Bearcats? Maybe Ed can enlighten me in the chat right now. Ed, why are they not allowed to be named the Bearcats? Because it's just a nickname. They can have their own logo for the Bearcats. Draw a different picture. Because maybe that's what I'm not getting. But on right now, it looks like you're telling a bunch of 8-year-olds they can't be something that, I mean, it's just nonsense. Yeah. Let's see what else. Anybody else? Anything else in the chat? UC basketball does look good.
UC basketball looks really good, and it's exciting.
When they get Dan Skillings back, the team's legit.
No, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. There was news this morning that one of UC's top football recruits is expected to flip to Ohio State, which is good.
Ed says he's starting a new podcast called Chatterbox Sports. That doesn't really explain anything to me. Because if you're calling it Chatterbox Sports, you're saying that, I mean, Chatterbox Sports is, I would say, a pretty unique thing.
It's a company.
Yeah, I would say you can't really.
I can go outside and find a bearcat. It's an animal.
It's an animal.
Like, it's a thing that exists. You can't
does
just
University of
copyright
Cincinnati
animals.
own the word Bearcat?
If they do, they shouldn't.
If they own the word Bearcat, then maybe I'm not getting it. But do they?
Even if they do own the word Bearcat, they chose to copyright middle schoolers.
Yeah. I don't know what I can do. All I wanted was UC basketball to be good, not have any just nonsense distractions like this.
Is it because they made too much money off of the name?
The middle school?
I'm sure Chatham Middle School was really raking in the millions.
No, I don't think the middle school was making money.
I don't know. I mean, maybe they made like a considerable amount of money. That's the only thing that I could think of that could make it like very, very like strict offense here.
I mean, there's just no way. Because you're right.
Where's this middle school at?
Tennessee. The middle of Tennessee.
It has nothing to do with us.
It's not even a big school.
It's not even a big school?
No.
Well, Blanchester's not big either. They made us cut out every single logo out of our school.
I
don't know, man.
Hudson Houdini in Chatterbox Bearcats said his grade school, which is also my grade school, Our Lady of the Visitation, we copy and pasted to a T the Minnesota Vikings logo.
Oh, that's what I was doing at Princeton.
So that's our logo.
Okay.
But it's just orange.
Oh, okay.
So it's not purple.
So you change the colors, you're good?
Correct. I think. I don't know how it works.
I mean, they were red and black seats.
They legitimately copy and pasted it. I mean, they legit copy and pasted it, which you can't do. I just don't understand why they can't use the nickname thing. If somebody could enlighten me, why the nickname is like a big deal.
If there's a spin zone for that, I would love to hear it.
I haven't seen one Bearcat fan say anything about the little kids not being able to be called the Bearcats. I've not seen one Bearcats fan be able to tell me that. And until I do, I'm going to say it's absolutely pathetic that you didn't let a bunch of 8-year-olds be called the Bearcats. Logo, bad. Bearcat nickname, have at it. Because who cares? But that's just at least I mean, the fact that we have to deal with this nonsense while the basketball team's so good is so sad. I don't want to talk about the little, what are they, the Cheatham? They're the cheaters? Is that the cheaters in Tennessee?
Chatham?
Cheatham?
Yeah, something like that.
Cheatham in Tennessee?
No, cheaters play in Columbus this weekend.
That's right. You guys aren't lawyers either. Correct. I mean, I'm 100% not a lawyer, so you got that right.
Ed, if you have a problem with them being called the Bearcats, you are part of the problem.
Ed, why would you have a problem with them being called the Bearcats? That has nothing to do with anything. Would you have
what about?
Are they allowed to be called the Wildcats? Or the Blue Devils?
What about the Loveland Tigers? Is LSU cracking the whip because they're named the Tigers?
I don't know. I don't get it. If somebody can tell,
I just don't know how fans can justify it.
If somebody can tell me how. Oh, he has no problem.
Okay.
Oh, then we're all on the same page.
We're all on the same page.
Everybody's on the same page.
We're all on the same page here.
It just said.
We're all on the same page.
We're all on the same page.
I do kind of appreciate UC just going all in. It's like, yeah, you can't have the logo. And you know what? While we're at it, take it all down.
Yeah.
Let's see if, you know what would be really funny? If UC should get back at Xavier. So once Xavier and this marketing team gets through all their redesign and everything,
yeah,
UC should buy the land the school's on and tear it down. Just like, oh yeah, you guys think you can be the Musketeers? Now you don't have a school. That would be the funniest thing. Cincy Reigns, keep buying that beer because we're buying Chatham Middle School.
or completely reverse their stance and say, we're going to have every grade school in the greater Cincinnati area go by the Bearcats.
Yeah.
Literally every school will now be the Bearcats.
That'd be good.
Just go completely opposite way. But the Bearcats basketball team is very, very good. Very good.
Very good. What, third or fourth in the Big 12 probably?
I don't know what the Big 12 standings are yet, but.
Well, I was just saying.
Oh, just in general?
Just in general.
Yeah, probably.
Like, that's awesome. No, I am not, and I know, I'm glad Ed's here. Maybe he can rationalize this one. I only hate UC football. Like, I'd be fine with UC basketball being all right because I like to go to those games, and it's more fun if they're ranked highly.
UC football.
But I hate UC football.
UC football's in a bad spot, man. Satterfield was so obviously not the right guy, and the fact that they're sticking with him here, what a horrible contract.
Is he locked in next year?
Yeah, dude. It was his fucking six. Sorry, Casey. I said F.
We're not right here.
He's locked into a 6-year deal.
Yeah, but what are the buyouts?
You can't. The buyout after this year, you can't do it. I don't think so.
Really?
I don't think you can. I don't think it makes sense financially to do it after this year.
Did you see Brian Kelly's numbers?
No.
It doesn't get below $30 million till like 2029.
Are you serious,
Yeah,
dude?
it's $60 million if they fire him after this season.
There's
They
no
can't
way-
do it.
I mean, what coach is worth that? I mean, Brian Kelly hasn't won shit. He's a fine head coach, I guess. He hasn't won a championship. But yeah, the UC football team's a disaster. Them losing out,
Satterfield's
getting
buyout.
to 5 wins and losing out, it's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. They're one. If they lose Sorsby next year, I don't know what the hell they
$4
are.
million.
Huh?
It's only $4 million.
After this year?
$8 million fired before end of the year 24. $4 million fired before end of the year 25. Then 2.5, 1.5, 1.
Man, they're going to let him ride.
That's
next
a
year.
big jump
They're
till
gonna-
2.5. So that would make sense.
They're going to have him ride next year.
Yeah, I would assume.
Yeah, this is pretty much boxed, Colin. This is our box for the day.
Oh, should we just box?
Yeah, we're just boxing.
Should we just shut it down and box?
Well, I mean, we can just box right
Or should
now.
we just keep going?
I think we just keep going. Elliot said a bad word.
I think
did
Casey
mark.
wants
Sorry.
to cut off the radio here. Do you have to do that?
Do we have to get off the radio still? We don't have to get off the radio. We're already done.
We're
with
off the radio.
Yeah.
This is all off the radio.
I mean, if you guys want to do a free box lunch, go right ahead.
Should we hide it now? What do you want to do?
Well, that's off the bench.
Okay, that's off the bench. All right.
Oh, that's professionalism, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a short week.
Everybody, I was not on the radio. Everybody have a blessed Monday. We're doing, I believe, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week. So we'll be here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. At least that's what I know as of right this very second. Other than that,
That's what I was told.
we'll see you guys tomorrow.
By you,
but
though,
for
so
those who
I
are
guess.
members, we'll just do a box lunch now.
Yeah, box lunch coming up in seconds, maybe.
Maybe
Who's
seconds.
to say? Who's to say?
Bye-bye.